Well, I was born in Murray, Utah, at Cottonwood Hospital. My parents both went to Murray High School and lived in the area when I was first born. Had a nice little house there. Very few memories of that house. More just little visual snapshots. My parents then wanted to sell that house and were looking for a place in actually Sandy, and they put the house up for sale and went out to dinner and came back, and there was a person waiting for them there, and they bought the house right there and then, which meant we had to move right away. So we moved into kind of a shoddy duplex complex area, a neighborhood, and that was a very interesting neighborhood. I have recollections of my big wheel being stolen or smashed, and neighbors' kids breaking into our house, and definitely not the best neighborhood. And so we lived there while my father was building our house in Sandy. And after I think it was in that house, one of the neighbors had either stolen or taken my big wheel, and so the kid across the street, Tommy, who was this arch villain for me for many years, or at least this, he was like the little devil that sat on your shoulder. Tommy said we should go and get them back, and so we went and took some sand, and I put it in the bumper. It was a big shiny chrome bumpers, and there was a spot looked like I'll put it in the bumper, and he put sand in the gas tank. And the police came for us. I was probably 4 years old at the time, maybe about 4, almost 5. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. At least I think I conveyed the point that I put the sand in the bumper, and Tommy had put the sand in the gas tank, and so we moved out of the neighborhood. I think even had a neighbor stick the Doberman pincer on me. These are all recollections of a 4-year-old, so I can't say how good they are, but those are recollections of that neighborhood. Then we moved to Sandy, in a neighborhood called Pepperwood. At the time, it was just a big sand hill, and we were one of the first houses in the upper division, but we moved in there before the house was all the way finished. But best get out of Dodge and go into that neighborhood. And so that's where I grew up, primarily from 5 until when I left at 18. My parents actually still live in that same house in the same neighborhood, which has grown quite a bit and definitely become more affluent. But growing up for me, it was a neighborhood in flux and growing, and a lot of new houses there. So one of our favorite pastimes was to go into houses under construction, especially ones that were getting near finished and things were locked up. We can kind of sneak our way into the house and walk around and see how it's being built and play in the junkyards, the piles of junk outside. But that was the kind of neighborhood we had. A lot of vacant lots we built forts in and do bike trails and near the mountains. So my childhood in Pepperwood was spent playing outside quite a bit in the neighborhood, and a really nice place to live. So my parents, Jerry and Colleen Hansen, Jerry Hansen and Colleen Cassidy actually, both lived, I went to Murray High School, though they lived around a bit. My father's parents got divorced when he was 8. His mother left his father, and he lived primarily with his father then for the school year, and then would follow his mom and her new husband, who was a journeyman welder, following the pipelines across the country. So he tells the stories of sleeping in the back seat of an old Buick or Pontiac or one of those cars where the back seats are the size of a bed. But that was his summertime bed when he was younger, and had that background. My mom lived in Magna and West Valley in Murray. I believe her father primarily managed apartment complexes. It was kind of the person on duty there. But as for me growing up, my mother was always very, very attentive, kept track of every performance, everything you were doing, loved giving you gifts, taught you how to work around the house, taught us how to cook and how to budget for cooking food. Very intelligent woman. I think she was a valedictorian of her high school, and so worked with homework. My father is an engineer by education, and now has had his own business for probably 20 years or so, doing mostly recycling. But Dad's a hard worker. One of my primary memories as a child, the Saturday mornings, Dad would come in 6 or 7 in the morning singing Rise and Shout, the Cougars are out, even though he was a Ute grad. And he would grab your sheets. And if you didn't wake up, he would grab your sheets and just pull them off. And I think my brother once thought he'll get the better of my dad and held onto the sheets real tight. And Dad came and pulled the sheets down my brother right off the bed. And so Saturdays were spent working around the yard or the house, fixing cars, finishing the basement. But my father could really fix anything. And that's one of my recollections of my father is, you know, anything was opened up. The washer, the TV, the car, the wall. There's always something being fixed by my father. And I think from him I got the tendency to try to fix things. I'm pretty handy with fixing most things, not nearly as good as my father, but he was head of maintenance at the Kennecott copper mine, the smelter area, for many, many years. So he's had a lot of practice fixing things. I not quite as much, but very happy childhood. Parents always made the holidays fun and exciting, and vacations every year. And we by no means a wealthy family in the area, but we never went hungry, and we're always well taken care of. So very good childhood. So if you ask any of my family members, extended family, my parents about my childhood, the first thing comes up is my accident-prone nature. I forgot how many times I've had stitches as a child, but it was definitely a lot. During one period, this kind of coincided with living in the duplex time and moving to Pepperwood. I was in the hospital, I think, 3 times in a couple of months for some big things. So for example, I was trying to hammer there was a nail sticking out of the wall in the duplex. And what I didn't realize is that it was an exterior wall. The nail hadn't got in because it was up against some concrete. And so I got my dad's big claw hammer and I smacked that nail, and the hammer flew right back into my face. And had to take me in. I think they had a plastic surgeon sew up my eye. I was at a jungle gym, and the top, it was like a big square jungle gym and 2 round bars on top. And I was in the round bars like a gymnast, probably 5 at the time. My mom had made some comment, watch, he's gonna fall. And sure enough, I fell and hit every bar going down on my nose like the Wheel of Fortune, click, 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 click. And broke my nose pretty bad, and they had to put that back together again. At Disneyland, not too long before after that, I'm walking along, and the guy's smoking a cigarette and swinging it in his arm, and just swinging, he's smoking. As I walk up behind, he puts a cigarette out in my eye. So had an eye patch for a while, a nose splint for a while. I guess probably a second eye patch with the other eye injury. In the house, in the duplex, I ran across to get the mail one day at the mailbox and just didn't think I needed to look for cars, and so got hit by a Pontiac, and that threw me, good 10 feet or so. Skinned knees, and I peed my pants. But they hauled me off the ambulance again. So, my poor parents had to deal with all that. As a younger kid, I'd hit my head in the fireplace and got stitches in my forehead. And there was a doorway in a kid's play area in my cousin's house. And I said, I think I can run in that door without ducking. And my cousin said, no, you can't. Yes, I can. So I ran full speed, and I just hit that doorway and flew up and hit the little ceiling of the doorway, came down and split my head open. I had, turned into a wall at a friend's house and split my head open again. Dove into a pool too shallow and split my head open again. Threw a piece of glass that I broke a jar, kind of like I was skipping a rock, and that cut my finger open, a good 2-inch cut. Knocked my front tooth out. That one was, we were building a tent in my buddy's basement, and he had unfinished walls. It was an unfinished basement. We had this big, 15 blanket tent, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get access to put this blanket up, or at least I felt I needed to hang from the framed-in wall, the support member that was between the two 2x4s. And so I'm hanging upside down from that. I'm trying to grab a blanket and put a book on top of it. And to do this, I've got a little popcorn bowl with a flat section. I've got a board on there, which we've used as a table in the tent, and a dictionary on that little table. So as I'm hanging upside down, I fell. And as I fell, I hit one edge of the board that's sitting on this bowl, and I launch up the dictionary, and it lands on my face and knocks out half my front tooth. So you try to explain that to your mother, and it sounds like it's kind of made up, but knowing my background, she accepted the answer for that, and that came up later in my life to be another issue. But a few more. I had a cousin fling a flaming marshmallow onto my shin, and that melted to it there. The most dangerous one, I think, was where I had trying to get a boomerang out of a tree, and I was on a rock next to a fence that was a sharp, spiked fence. So it had a single spike and then two spikes on either side, and I slipped off the rock and I fell on that fence and I impaled myself. But I hit and I grabbed the crossbar fast enough and popped myself up, and I was in shock pretty quickly. But in such shock, I didn't realize I was hurt. I thought it knocked the wind out of me, but that was it. So we were at my neighbor's house. My dad had taken me down on his motorcycle, so I jumped on his motorcycle with him. It was probably 10 or 11 maybe. And get home, and Mom can see some blood on my shirt. She goes, "What's that?" And she lifts up my shirt, and there's this big gash on my stomach between two ribs. And she's, of course, frightening, takes off my shirt, and my armpit falls out. So I had impaled myself, my armpit and my stomach, and had to get that sewn up. I think not too long before that, my neighbor's trampoline was running to get on that and slipped. It was in-ground trampoline, and the spring caught my forehead, my eye, and chipped a tooth right there. So yeah, I put my parents through a lot of medical anxiety, I think, as a child. I think through my childhood had a lot of crazy falls and things that could have done worse. I fell from a tower at scout camp once, and I landed just fine, actually. And the next guy fell the next day, ended up on life flight. So I've had my fair share of lucky chances of not getting hurt by things, but I've also had a lot where I got hurt. And then for the most part, as an adult, a little more common sense set in, and much fewer injuries. So glad that's something that has now passed. So living in a neighborhood that was mostly undeveloped, there was as you drove in the neighborhood, there was no houses on the right for about a mile. On the left, I'm sorry. On the right, there was all the houses in this big, almost a question mark shaped hook, made what we called the field. There was no houses in the field for almost my entire childhood, but there was great lizard hunting out there. And that was one of my favorite childhood memories. We'd go out with a bucket and 3 or 4 guys, and we had certain lizard hunting areas. We had a place called Paradise City, like Whiptail Alley, and gave some weird names to all of them. Rainbow City was one, Paradise City. And so Rainbow City is where we found more rainbow-bellied lizards. So, and the lizards in Utah, you can get rainbow belly, you get blue belly, you get whiptails. And we'd go out with a bucket, and we'd usually find a lizard under an old piece of wood. So a piece of plywood laying there is usually the best place for a lizard. And so it's cool, but not too close to the ground. So we'd go by and find a board, and with the winds there and the housing always being built, there's always some board somewhere. And so we knew what boards to go to, and we'd go throw it up, and there'd be a lizard, and we'd chase it and court it in a scrub or a sagebrush, and then we'd get around, and one guy, surround it. We'd grab the lizard and put it in the bucket, and we'd go and catch 4 and 5 lizards, and we'd had a lot of fun playing with lizards, and we learned eventually that we couldn't keep them very long. As much as we tried to feed them mealworms and water, they always died, or we'd do that, someone's cat would get into our bucket and eat our lizards. And so we never had many lizards that lasted long as pets. Usually we take them, we build a lizard playground somewhere, play with the lizards, and then we'd often let them go. Though more often than not, they'd escape somewhere. You'd find a dead, dry lizard under your couch a few months later. We also, with that, found a lot of scorpions. Scorpions you find under usually blocks of concrete that, as a concrete truck rinses itself out, leaves some chunks laying around. You lift up that, and you found a lot of scorpions there. We were not nice to scorpions. We usually would kill the scorpions in slightly a malicious way. I think at one point we even sprayed some paint on one, lit it on fire. We were not very nice to bugs. So scorpions got it, and then sometimes we even do gladiator contest. We caught a black widow once and a scorpion, and put them in a bucket and watched them fight. And if I recall correctly, the black widow bit the scorpion. Before it died, it stung the black widow, and they both ended up dying. So there was that one. Then we also had one where there were some kids who apparently would drink beer in the field behind my friend's house, and apparently being inebriated, they left a full can of beer there. So we took some beer and poured it into a bucket, and put some bugs in there and to see what would happen. And if I recall, the scorpion stung itself in the neck after playing in the beer, and killed itself. And so that was childhood playing with bugs. And I think the irony of all that is one of my friends, Heath, who I think we all thought would be a brain surgeon. Heath was a very intelligent man and good artist and great athlete. He became a entomologist that studies bugs. So apparently that was life training for him. For me, I still just squish a bug when I see one. One of the other pastimes he did was to build underground forts in the neighborhood. Since there was so many undeveloped lots, we would just go grab our shovels, go somewhere and just dig a hole and grab some wood from a house site, from the garbage dumpster, span it across there, throw across some boards on top of that, and we'd throw sand and bushes on top, try to make it look like there wasn't something there. We got pretty good, actually. Our neighborhood was kind of crisscrossed with underground forts here and there in different neighborhoods. And we would, I think the goal was to get an underground fort that it was invisible and you could walk on it, you wouldn't know you're there. Most of our forts, if you walked on that, you'd probably collapse it. We did build, I think, the strongest fort under, it was a house that had burned down. We think the builder, I think, couldn't pay for the house and lit it on fire. And so they cleared out the foundation. It was just a hole at that point. And so we kind of used that site, and we found some pallets and old picnic tables for the roofs and really reinforced those so that was strong. And so that was underground fort. We'd go and we'd have picnics inside the underground forts and bring blankets in there. We also built one on the lot next door made of pallets, and that was an above ground fort, but we actually put a picnic table top on top and a patio and chairs. So it was strong enough you actually can put a little deck on top and put an umbrella up there. It looked like some little third world shanty in this neighborhood that there was complaints about. But that was one of my favorite childhood memories, was building forts everywhere we could. We would have loved to do a tree fort, but in Sandy it was scrub oak and chokecherry, and there wasn't enough tree to really build a tree fort there. As a young teenager, near teenager, I think the order of business was a bit be a bit more mischievous, and hopefully my kids don't follow that. But we would, consisting of toilet papering houses, doorbell ditching, water balloons at cars, snowballs at cars. That was definitely kind of an order of business that we would do. So a lot of night mischief. The goal was to harass but never cause any permanent damage. So whether I say that means it makes us good or not, I'm not quite sure. I remember going to a buddy's house, and his mom had a bunch of water balloons on. Can I water balloon cars? Okay, so I went with them. We're water ballooning cars, and we'd hit a car and run. And then one of our neighbors came and grabbed us, and he was nice about it. He was much nicer than he should have been, but he caught us then. I recall a time where we were snowballing cars and hit some car, and the guy went berserk. Now, granted, no one likes getting hit by a car, so we all took off running. I was the snow on the ground, so I actually ran on top of the sagebrush, so you couldn't follow my footprints. So I ran across sagebrush for 100 yards, then took off darting and go and hide. We'd occasionally light the Whistler fireworks. We'd put them on someone's front doorstep about 1 in the morning, light it, and run off. Some of the more mischievous things we did, we took bottle rockets and we'd aim at someone's front door, a good distance away to make it a fair show. Ring the doorbell and then light the bottle rocket and try to shoot the bottle rocket in the house when they open the door. Unfortunately, one of those houses that we tormented did become an apostle. So at the pearly gates, that may be a challenge one day for me. So there was, or you take the little firecrackers that you pull 2 strings and they pop. We go time on doors at night. We even to this, one of the same houses had these large concrete balls on pillars around the house. And so we went and took jack-o'-lantern faces on crepe paper, cut those out, put some tape, and put them on all the balls to have all these funny faces on there, figuring we're going to use chalk, but each ball was like $1,000. And so we said, let's have fun, but make it easy to clean up. And so I was usually pretty good about not being caught. The key to not being caught is not go with dumb people. So the 2 times that I really got busted was, I think once the swim team went and toilet papered the swim team coach's house. And someone told me to bring a couple eggs. I brought a couple eggs. And when a car came, I had dropped the eggs and broke them. And so as we were leaving, I threw an eggshell and on the front porch. It was just sitting there. Well, someone put whipped cream around the steps, or shaving cream. And so when the swim team coach saw it, he told the team and said, well, I don't care if it's toilet paper in my house, but the eggs are what really bothers me. And so someone ratted me out as not only bringing the eggs, but having coordinated the whole thing, which was not true. And so I'm sleeping out on my back deck that night, and my mom wakes me up. I wasn't on the swim team anymore at that point. And she said, did you toilet paper this person's house? And I woke up, and there's no good excuse you can think of when you first wake up. And went, yeah. You go clean it up right now. So I had to clean his whole house up myself, and some friend came by and cleaned up. Another time, it was a friend's birthday party, and after we went to his house, we were walking the neighborhood. I'm not quite sure what the plan was, but someone grabbed a gas can. Why they grabbed a gas can? Well, I know why he grabbed a gas can. He was a pyromaniac, but it wasn't a great idea. But he had a gas can and a pocket full of firecrackers. So he pours the gas on the middle of the sidewalk and fills and puts the firecrackers on there. And I'm not thinking this is the best idea, but I see a car coming, a guy's car, and no one's listening, so I just bolted. I took off and got a good seat, 50 yards away, hiding in the bush. And one of the guys lights it up and lights the match just as the car rounds the corner and takes off. And out pops, remember, the bishopric. And he jumps out and yells three of the guys' names, because apparently someone was teasing one of the girls and said, we're going to burn your house down tonight. And so he was apparently out looking for us, being mischievous. And as he's trying to stomp out this gasoline fire, not noticing there's firecrackers, and their firecrackers are exploding. So I'm watching, remember, the bishopric here getting blown up by firecrackers. And I took off running. And we eventually all met back up at this friend's house. And by the time we got there, he had already called my friend's mom. And so my friend had to call up and apologize. And as a good faith, though, he only ratted out the friends whose names the bishop member had called and said, yeah, the 3 of us were there, we're sorry, but those who didn't get seen or caught didn't quite get in trouble. So that was some of the mischievousness that we did as kids. There was, I'm sure, plenty more, but I do hope my kids learn better lessons than me. One of the more traumatic moments I remember as a kid was snow day. I think I was probably elementary age still at this point. And the buses couldn't easily get to our neighborhood when it snowed a lot. And we had a good, 2 or 3 feet of snow that day. And so we had no school. So, it's total play day for all the kids. And it snowed a bunch and the sun came out at that point. So it was just the perfect day. And fresh snow, blue sky, we're running around. We're at my neighbor's house, and they've got their 3-wheeler out and ATC, and they're driving around a turnaround driveway in the snow, and we're kind of hiding across the field where one of our forts was, and had snowballs, and we're throwing them at the girls, and they're trying to dodge it, and they're kind of waiting to pull out. And there's 2 girls on the 3-wheelers, and the one in the back is named Andrea. And Andrea suddenly stands up and walks over a snowbank and falls over. Just no explanation for that. So I walk over and I kind of shake her, and I see some blood on the snow. And I kind of roll over and kind of lift up her coat, and she's got a perfect little hole in her back. And I actually just been shooting with my father about a month ago with a .22 rifle. I said, that's the size of a .22 bullet hole. And so we ran and grabbed my friend's mom, and I was saying, she might have been shot. She's like, no, I think just a part of the three-wheeler popped up and got her. And she picked her up and walked her to her house. Well, it turns out my next door neighbor was playing with his father's gun on the snow day. And don't know if he's trying to shoot cans off of the balcony. I think what the report was, he was trying to shoot into the field, but clearly was way undershot in that case. But ended up shooting Andrea. And fortunately, I think it bounced off her hip and went up near her heart, but just missed her heart. And they were able to save her, and I think she had a full recovery. And I think I recall the story that I heard was while in the hospital, they'd asked her if they were going to press charges or sue him for this. And she was still a young girl. She goes, well, no, he's my neighbor. I love him. And so, it was an accident. It was a scary accident to actually see, this neighborhood friend of yours shot, and just to think of, if we were all in one line, basically, her, the girl in front of the ATC, and then me and my friends facing him, throwing snowballs at him. So, that could have, the fact that anybody it was a freakishly bad luck, but it could have hit somebody, and killed them. So lucky that that didn't happen. So my mom always liked to put us in sports, and I think I've tried every sport there was and succeeded in very few. But my childhood was full of lots of sports. So I started off with soccer. I scored 1 goal in soccer, and that was on my own team as a defender. I went to kick the ball, missed it, and my heel caught it, and I kicked it in the goal. So was not a great soccer player. I always seemed to believe as a kid, if I stared straight at the sun, it would give me power. This is me as a 5-year-old. So I'd look at the sun, then I'd start playing the game, and probably blinded myself half the time. I tried baseball for a half season. I quit that. Didn't have the coordination, and I just ended up picking, Danny Lyons in right field for the whole time, which is, I think, most kids' experience with baseball. So baseball didn't go well. I played junior jazz basketball. I got decent at basketball when I was older, but I was not very good as a kid. I think I remember I had one three-pointer once where the time was running out, and it wasn't even like for a lead. It was just into the half, and had the ball and just kind of threw it up, and it went in, and I was like, I don't know. Had no idea why that went in, but I played basketball and did swim team, which was okay, but I like diving more. And so I dove a lot, though one of the problems with diving is I got hit in the ear in a little scuffle at junior high, and it had a hole in my eardrum that was not quite diagnosed. And something was wrong, but I had a hole there. So I would dive and I always get water in my ear for the years I did that. The sport I loved the most was football. So I played Little League football for 8 years. I always played in the B League because I got more playing time. I played a lot of defense, a little bit of offense. But it was a fun sport to play. And I went through high school. On high school, I made the team my junior and senior year. It was a big tryout, and so I made it. And I was very happy to make it. And then the coach calls 15 of us in and says, well, you guys made the team, but you made the team because you played with last year and we had some guys to practice with, but you won't play much. So it was called, and the edited form was the crap list. So I was on the crap list, and I think half the guys in the crap list, which frankly were some of the better players that were on the team, quit. So coach was really pretty lousy, I thought. But we had some guys who were great linebackers, some good linemen. We had some folks who really could play, but weren't on the coach's favorite list, which you get the politics. So I stuck with it, and I basically ran the meat squad defense in practice, but I played one varsity play in 2 years. So the story I recall, which is slight consolation, is I went dressed down and played JV, and even then they were starting a junior linebacker on varsity, so he'd practice junior and varsity. So I'd play special teams on JV in my senior year, which wasn't much consolation. But the last game of the year, coach put me in, and I had a field day. I really was in virtually every tackle and some real good hits, and I got done and was walking on the field, and the coach hit me in the back and said, "Boy, Hansen, I should have played you more this year." I just hit myself in the head and like, what do you do? But I did track and field. I started off doing the 100, 200 high jump and javelin, dropped the 200 after my Freshman year, I dropped the 100 after my sophomore year. I dropped the high jump after my junior year. So my senior year is just doing javelin. And even that, the same ditzy coach who patted me on the back had taught me to throw wrong. So at regional finals, my senior year, our district, I'm warming up and some guy says, "You're throwing off the wrong foot." So well, that's the foot my coach told me to throw. He goes, "No, you're throwing off the wrong foot." So I threw off the right foot and added like 30 feet to my throw right there. And I was mad, and I warming up, and I was doing great, and they threw my arm out. So I was not destined to do great in sports. The one sport I was okay in was wrestling. I think I lost 6 matches in my career in wrestling. I think 2 my first year, undefeated my second year, and then I lost 4 my senior year where I was varsity on and off. And it was a big team of 100 plus kids, maybe up to 200 at some point. So you're always fighting for a spot. But I lost my varsity spot right before state to another guy. I beat him the first match 2-1. He beat me the second match 2-1. He beat me the third match 3-2, and then he went to state and took fifth. So that's the closest I came to sports success. But it's something I've always loved doing. I still, at work, I've played ultimate frisbee and football and basketball and volleyball and hockey now. I picked up hockey about 10 years ago. So sports is a fun part of my life. Never excelled, but I'm realizing that I'm at least keeping my speed. So as everyone gets older and fatter, perhaps I look better just because I'm not decaying as fast. So education, I went to, started off at a little preschool in Sandy, and then went to Sunrise Elementary School for a couple of years until they finished Sprucewood Elementary, which was closer to my house. So in second grade, I believe we all got transferred over to Sprucewood. Went to Indian Hills Middle School in Sandy, where when I first got there, it went up to 8th grade. And so I got there in 6th grade. And once I got to 7th grade, I think they moved 6th grade down to elementary school. And then as I got to 8th grade, they moved, actually it was 7th grade, they moved 9th grade down to junior high. So we got this extra long stay in junior high, longer than I think any other class had. And that was like the worst school. Junior high being the most awkward of places. And then I went to Alta High afterwards. From Alta High, got accepted to BYU. And did an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering at BYU. It took me 4 years, 8 semesters. And then after BYU, I went to law school at Franklin Pierce Law, which is now merged with University of New Hampshire Law School. So those were the schools I went to. In 8th grade, I was in an English class, and I think it was a regular English class, if I recall correctly, with Mr. Gentry. And I was doing quite well that year. My grades were starting to pick up. But I got burned out and just stopped turning things in. It was near the end of the year. And so at midterm, I had an F in that class, an F in a couple of classes, which I'm now learning as a parent on the flip side how frustrating that is to parents. And Mr. Gentry, at midterm, showed me my grade, and it was an F. He said, "I was going to recommend you for honors English class for next year, but if you don't get your grade up, I'm not going to do that." And I think he'd take notice of my writing. My writing was actually relatively good, though my mom did help me proofread things, and so there was a little bit of her in that. So I busted my chops, and I actually took that F to an A, which statistically was impossible, but for extra credit and grading on the curve, I moved up to an A. And so he brought me up. He would show everyone their grade in the semester. He'd bring you up, had a ruler there, and show your grade. He said, "Don't you think you can ever do that again? But I'm going to recommend you for honors English." And for the reason, because I got an honors English, I got an honors history. And at that point, I kind of realized that I might be kind of smart. Definitely not the smartest kid in the class. We had some really, really intelligent guys in the class who understood everything, but I think I realized I wasn't stupid at that point. And so that kind of helped me as I started taking honors classes and AP classes through school. And so I think I owe a lot to Mr. Gentry. Helped me realize that I wasn't dumb. And I think as a kid, sometimes you cultivate a persona of yourself, and I thought I was kind of a dumb kid. And there was actually a funny story in high school. This was my senior year. There was a girl in my neighborhood that told me this, and she was leaving home and said, "Well, I'm going to Brett's house to work on an English project." My mom said, "Whose house?" "Brett Hansen." "Why are you working with Brett Hansen?" Well, I need some help. She goes, well, but pardon me, but isn't he kind of dumb? She goes, no, Mom, he's actually really smart. So I think perhaps by being slightly obnoxious and a little ADHD bouncing around a lot, I guess I thought, and many people thought I was probably kind of dumb. I think this actually carried over to law school. In law school, I'd gotten mono, I think, in my freshman year of BYU. I didn't earn it. I think just too many guys in close proximity shared the same drinking fountain that our RA had it, and then a few guys came down with it, which meant that after that point, I always fall asleep in class. So in law school, I would continue to fall asleep in class, and frankly, law school is kind of boring. So I'd sleep in class, and then I would cram for finals. And I had some notes for constitutional law, which were really good notes. I went to TA sessions, and I built up a good flow chart and a logical process for analyzing constitutional issue. And so I had my notes, and I was trying to be nice and said to my friends, do you want a copy? And the typical answer was, you slept the entire semester. I do not want your notes. And so I gave my notes to two other people who actually took them. I had the highest grade in the class, and the other two had the next two highest grades in the class. So I think I just learned fast, but it was Mr. Gentry is one I think I owe to, where he told me that I could get good grades and that I wasn't actually dumb, and that really helped me kind of push my way through engineering school and law school, where my ACT score and my LSAT scores were not fantastic, but I definitely exceeded what they said I could do in standardized tests. So it was kind of that lesson carried on with me throughout my life. So throughout the years, I'd always tried to run for student body office. I think my parents said, go ahead and run, have fun, do it, and try to be active if you can and see what happens. You might get lucky. Well, I never got lucky. I would run and get killed every time. Never made other primaries once. And I remember even having people saying, hey, I didn't vote for you. And I was a little obnoxious and a teaser quite a bit. So I got crushed every election. That being said, I can't say I ever took an election terribly seriously. I think my senior year, we're looking for a campaign slogan. And nothing rhymes well with Brett or Hansen. And my friend Heath was running. He had out Heath candy bars. Great marketing campaign. Brett, what do you do? Hansen, what do you do? You'd be dancing if you vote for Hansen. It just doesn't work. So we went just for absurdity. I think might have been my dad's idea, frankly. It sure sounds like it, but it could have been mine. We went to a t-shirt shop, and it had a t-shirt that said, I'd rather be 40 than pregnant. And so we took that shirt and cut off 40, the iron-on, and got president. So I'd rather be president than pregnant. Vote for Brett. And that was my campaign slogan my senior year. Needless to say, I didn't win. The shirts became collector items for a while. I'm not sure who I gave the shirts to some friends to wear. None of them ever gave them to me back. I wish I'd kept one of them still. But having lost every election, I wanted to participate and be engaged my senior year, but nothing happened. So I lost the student body election. And I had a friend of mine say, hey, something good's coming for you this next year. I'm like, okay. And I was very active in seminary, and we had at the time the biggest seminary in the world, some I think 2,000 students in our seminary. And the seminary was headed by a council, kind of like student body officers, but you're called. And there was 12 of us or so. And so sure enough, a few weeks later, my stake president called me and extended a call to me for Seminary Council. And actually, one of my closest friends, Angie Jolly, was also called the Seminary Council, and one of her closest friends, Andrew Moyer, was as well. And so it was kind of fun that three really close friends got called in the council together, and we were the only, Angie and I were only two from the same ward. And usually they would have one per stake. We had, I think, might have been actually 4 from our stake. And that might have stake. We had a couple of stakes. We had quite a few stakes in our school, but we had quite a few from our stake in council, which was a great experience. We had a chance to set the themes and speak in sacrament meetings around the area and plan firesides and devotionals, and actually got to teach classes a number of times where teacher has a meeting and asked I'd fill in for the class, and I got to fill in for class sometimes and teach early morning seminary. So that was one of those experiences my senior year, going from perhaps a kid who was not seen as the most spiritual to being in seminary council was a good change for me and a good chance to learn the scriptures and to learn to speak to people. And that was, I think, one of the things I was most proud of in high school, where I got a chance to talk to a lot of people on a level that was a little, more mature, more spiritual level than you usually get in high school. And so that was, a great experience throughout the year. So in school, I had good grades, but never had great grades. Solid B+ average, pretty good. I took the ACT the night before, the day after prom, actually. Prom was the night before. And I admit I fell asleep during the ACT, during the math section, and just didn't do well. So I got a 20 on the ACT, which I didn't realize was bad until, how bad that was until later. But yeah, that wasn't a very good ACT. I did have a number of, I had taken 8 honors classes and 5 AP classes, and then I was involved. I was in the president of the German club, and I think in the Russian club, and vice president of the National Honor Society, and then ended up actually getting 6 high school letters, even though I earned the 3 wrestling ones. Those were for winning tournaments or for a state championship for the team. For track, and 2 for track, 1 for football, those were basically for being on the team for 3+ years. So sticking with it, even though I achieved nothing. So applying for BYU, I was a little intimidated because that was my top school choice, but my grades were not near that of my friends. But I turned my application in like on a Thursday, and next Thursday I got an acceptance notice. And the best I can figure was that my ecclesiastical endorsement with Seminary Council and got me in, because there wasn't enough time to look at my anything of my written statement or what I've turned in. But it was definitely great to get into BYU because it was the only school I applied for. And while at BYU, I met one person who had a lower ACT score than me, and he was on track scholarship. So I didn't do well on the standardized test, but at BYU, I was, kind of top plus area of the bell curve, just over the bell curve on the better side of the grades, and I did just fine, and actually finished BYU in only 8 semesters, which I think the only person I know at BYU who did that from my engineering program. It was in my group at least. So it worked out well. And then after undergrad, I wanted to apply to law school and took the LSAT. And the first time I took the LSAT, I failed it because I went the wrong day. I was down in a hammock at my parents' house looking at the information for tomorrow, what I needed to bring, ID and this, and I looked at the date and then checked the calendar and realized it was that morning I'd missed it. So I didn't do well the first time, so I took it a second time, but I had just gotten married, I was working, I was prepping for school, and so I didn't have time to take an LSAT score. So I took the LSAT, and I can't remember the range, but I got like a 127, which was, not very good for getting into. I wanted to go to BYU, I thought, because it was so inexpensive, which was a good school to go to, and that was my goal. I was in a Temple Recommend interview, though, and after I had got my LSAT score and turned my application in, and the member of the state presidency, who I'd never met before, at a student ward, was asking me about what I was going to do. I said, well, I was going to go to law school, but I want to do patent law. He goes, oh, you going to BYU? I said, well, maybe if I can get in there. He said, the patent program there is not as good. They say it is, and they brag about it, but there's a lot of better schools in the nation. I think it's just more, we're good at everything. And so I kind of took a few pokes at BYU. And he goes, no, that's not true. I'm actually on the law school admission committee. I'm toast. So I didn't get into law school. But one of the schools I looked at was Franklin Pierce Law Center in New Hampshire. And I was interested in Franklin Pierce for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to go to New England. There's something about New England that always drew me there. And kind of found out I actually had ancestors from that area. But I also wanted to do patent and trademark law. And that was the top patent and trademark law school in the nation. And so I looked at the requirements, and for the most part, every law school I looked at going, my LSAT score was not very good. My grades out of college were 3.2, so not great, but definitely respectable, but not going to get me into law school easily. So I remember writing my written statement. I had a standard written statement for the law schools I applied to. And for Franklin Pierce, I wrote a special one because it said, if your LSAT scores or your grades aren't as good as you think they are, as you think they should be, tell us why. And so I went through and I made an argument against standardized testing, saying how I had a terrible ACT score, but I still did really good undergrad. And then undergrad, we had a test, personality test for my senior project that tried to characterize who you were. Well, my results came back that said I was female, one of like the third of 4 kids that I'm interested in the hotel business, and it was just all messed up. Well, what happened was the scan trotted read horizontally as opposed to vertically and gave all the wrong answers for data I'd put in. It just spit it out all wrong. And it gave me this very weird, introverted, artsy kind of personality or profile. So I kind of said, look, I've had standardized tests tell me that I was dumb. I had one tell me that I was a woman, and I put my doctor promptly corrected that error. And just made fun of the testing that it really tests how well you study for a test, but it doesn't really measure how intelligent you are and how well you succeed. So I got my acceptance to Franklin Pierce, and the bottom handwritten note was strong personal statement. So I think I managed to talk my way into law school, and I was right. I finished again kind of just over the bell curve in higher, top half of the class. Not much higher, but come to find out that B students get most of the jobs anyway, so it worked out quite well. So I had a lot of jobs here and there, and definitely didn't stick to one industry. I think the first thing I did, if you call it industry, was weeding for neighbors. It was my first job. Get some houses, I'd weed for those neighbors, just a project here and there. My dad taught us to work pretty well, so I was in decent demand. And then I would do some landscaping for some neighbors, do yard work for other neighbors. Those were my first few jobs growing up. And then, if you can count lemonade stands and things like that. Then I got a job as a lifeguard at the neighborhood pool. That was a fantastic job. You got to sit there all summer and get a tan. And I always got the shift where I could watch the sunset from the chair that faced the Great Salt Lake from the benches. And so these great views, and your friends were hanging out there. And so it was a fun job. Really enjoyed that. And got very tan, never wore sunblock. I recall once at a seminary summer meeting, the teacher wanted to do some kind of object lesson. He said, well, come here, take off your sandals, take off my sandals. And there's these giant white stripes where my sandal straps were, and these dark feet. So it looked like I was still wearing sandals, even though they were off. So I had that job, and then my senior year I also took a job at Baskin-Robbins to be near a girl that I liked who was on the Seminary Council with me. And worked that job for a while until lifeguarding picked up too much. And then did lifeguarding, worked at my father's, had a greenhouse for a while, so worked at my father's greenhouse, moving flowers around, doing cleanup work there. My freshman year I also took a job at ZCMI. I was a gift wrap stock boy for the Christmas season, so I got a temp job there where it was me and 50 women. And I kept in stock with wrapping paper and helped wrap the big giant like treadmills and things that had no business being wrapped. And that job turned into they asked me to stay afterwards as a rover, which worked pretty well, but some of the quirks about ZCMI at the time was you had a ZCMI charge card, and so there's little old ladies that come walking out, and I'm working candy that day, and they, ooh, can I get 2 chocolates? And they hand me the ZCMI charge card. So you had to go through, get the carbon copy, and you'd swipe the paper and sign it and split the different forms up and put them in different boxes for a $2 piece of candy. I also had once where I worked the toy department. I got a call, and someone asked me if I had any Barney dolls. And this is when Barney the purple dinosaur was popular, which I'd actually never had seen at that point because it just barely broken onto the scene. And I was in college, and of course, not watching Barney. So I go walk around the toy store, put them on hold, and get back and say, I'm sorry, man, we have no Flintstone toys whatsoever. Goodbye, and hung up. So I had Barney Rubble as opposed to Barney the dinosaur. So I'm sure she thought this person was an idiot. So I had that job before my mission. One of my mission, I came back and I began working immediately at the Mission Training Center in Provo. I I taught how to teach English, was the class I taught. I also substitute for the missionaries who were learning English. I would teach them English sometimes. And then I also supervised the missionaries would teach English classes to people in the community to get practice. I supervised those classes in the evenings. So that lasted about a year. It was a fun job, MTC quite a bit. But shirt and tie every day is one of those things you don't always love to do. So from there, I got a job as a grader for some thermodynamics classes, a TA for geometric dimensioning and tolerancing class. That is a manufacturing class with GD&T parts of it. So I got a TA job there. Then for college, I had a job as a tool boy. There's a tool room down in the basement of the Clyde building, and I worked there for about 2 years. A great job where I could actually do my other jobs while waiting for folks to check out thermocouples or U2 manometers or velometers, whatever kind of meter somebody would need. I ran that room, which was, I think, full of mercury. So that may explain me in later years, I'm sure. So that was a good job where I could do my homework while getting paid at BYU, and really worked out well for me. Then law school did much the same thing. I actually worked as a was it grader? I was a TA actually for legal research and writing with most of the foreign students who were in a master's program, and did that for 2 to 3 years at law school as a teaching assistant, and that was a good job. And also I was a teaching assistant for constitutional law. So a good chance to work well in school, and had some good jobs doing it. It really taught me how to work well. So while I was at BYU and turned in my mission papers, my freshman year, I was home at my parents' house for Saturday or Sundays. I'm walking in, my mom said, "I know you're going on your mission." I said, where am I getting called on the mission? She goes, "Ukraine, Kiev." I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, it's opening up and that's where you're going." My mom has a spooky way of knowing things that she shouldn't know, so that stuck with me. So I turned my mission papers in February 1993, I guess. And I was working as ECMI that night, and my papers had come in at my parents' house. And so it was a slow night, and we drew straws, so you got to go home early, and I drew the short straw. I'm like, great. So it worked out well. My mission papers are at home. Like, you dummy, just go anyway. If you didn't the short straw, you should have told us. We'd have let you go. So I get home, and I've got my family there, and I think a friend or two is there. And so we all are sitting around guessing where I was going to get called. And I almost bought a Ukraine Kiev t-shirt that day too. I'm like, I don't want to, what if I'm wrong? What if my mom was wrong? But she really seemed right. So everyone kind of guessed missions, and I said, Ukraine Kiev. And I open the papers and pull them out. And, "You're hereby called to serve in the Ukraine Kiev mission." It's like, of all the missions, how'd you guess that one? I'm like, Mom told me. And if Mom told me, she was right. And my mom was often that way. And I'm still learning to listen to her all the time. But so I was really excited to get that call to be one of the early missionaries in Ukraine. It was a great experience. And I remember actually at BYU afterwards, just kind of on my knees praying and saying, thank you for the calling. And I really wanted to go someplace new in this mission where no one heard the missionaries before. Really try something new and be out there and really work with people who've never had a chance to hear anything about the gospel. And that got answered, but not in the way I expected it to. So being called to Ukraine, Kiev, Russian speaking, I get sent to the MTC May 12th. This is my entry date, 1993. So I'm in the Mission Training Center. There's my dorm floor is full of Russian speakers. We've got 2 districts who came in the same day and both learning Russian. There was some guys going to Kiev, and I believe some going to St. Petersburg in that group. And it kind of mixed in with both different classes. So half my class was Kiev, half was St. Petersburg, Russia. So we're in the Mission Training Center 3 weeks in, learning Russian, and the intercom comes out of my class. And the voice says, I think Sister Robbins was teaching at the time, or that was morning, so it would have been Brother Amendola, I think. Amendola, can you have Elder Birch and Elder Blanchard, who were companions? I'm like, okay. Those two being called down. There was a few quirky things that we were all dealing with. I think Birch had broke a giant potato somewhere and was having to deal with that. And Elder Hansen come to the mission president's office at 1 o'clock. Like, okay. And just the three of us, like, what did we do? I wouldn't say we were mischievous, but we had an ugly tie day, and we'd have Pringles lids, and we put duct tape around and use plate for frisbees and climbing up the walls and a lot of handstands. So we were definitely wigglier missionaries. I'm like, are we in trouble? What's going on? So that was a couple hours away, and we had some celestial service between that time, which meant we had to clean toilets. So as we're doing that, and we're like, what do we think this is? And one of the guys says, you're going out of Mongolia somewhere. And we found in the sister district, 3 other missionaries were called down there to the mission president's office. So we're all somewhat taken aback by this, and we show at the mission president's office, and he's got an encyclopedia open. Well, that's never a good thing when the mission president has an encyclopedia open. There's something he doesn't know, which means something bizarre. So we sit down, and this is President Grant in the Mission Training Center. He said, there's opportunities open in faraway places like outer Mongolia, and we'd like to extend a transfer to you to U6. I said, well, where to? He said, outer Mongolia. And we thought that was an expression that he didn't actually mean outer Mongolia, so he had the Mongolian encyclopedia open. He said, you'll be teaching English in universities. You may not wear your shirt and tie. You may not be with your companions. You may be there for 3 years. We don't know. But, will you accept this calling? And we're like, actually, I don't think, he didn't even say will you accept. I think he just said, okay. I'm like, did we have a chance to say no? Like, none of us would have said no, but we got that. So we were really excited. We got in a little bit of trouble after that because he did say, if I were you, I wouldn't call home. I'd just write a letter. Okay, so he wrote a letter, and that night our bishopric members had been notified. And he came in, that's exciting. And we're going to be the first missionaries in Mongolia. So that was the calling to be the first missionaries in Mongolia to open up the country for preaching the gospel, to teach English in universities. It sounded like that. It was the answer to my prayer of wanting to be someplace new and wanting to really meet someone who never had heard about the gospel. And so we were really excited. And so our branch president came in and said, well, did you call your family yet? And I said, well, no. We wrote letters. I'll give him a call. It's okay. So we all called home, very excited about it. Well, the mission president found out we'd called home. He took us in his office and chewed us out up and down. If I tell you not to call home, you don't disobey me. And, we're like, we said, he was kind of vague. We thought he said it was just our choice. But so we took a good chewing out. And then he actually spoke at a devotional that night about choosing the higher path. In which he chewed us out again. He was looking at the 6 of us just chewing us out. And so that didn't go very well. So a few weeks later, my companion got transferred, Elder George, to Latvia or Lithuania, one of the Baltics, because Russia was having Ukraine was having visa problems, got transferred to the Baltics. And they brought in 10 missionaries and gave him the transfer. And he said, well, if I were you, I wouldn't call him. I'd just write a letter. And he said, I'll leave you guys here and let you talk it over. So he left. And the newly transferred missionary said, well, should we call home? He didn't say don't call home. He said just he'd rather us write a letter, but he's okay. Like, no, it's not what he means. He means don't call home. Trust us. Like, no, like, trust us. And there's 2 of us. 2 of us had companions who weren't going to Mongolia at the time. We're like, no, believe us. We got chewed out. Don't do it. So that was kind of the excitement of being transferred to Mongolia. But my parents had then had a friend from high school print up some shirts with Mongolia on it, sent it to the 6 of us, and became a very interesting time. So since we were called Ukraine, we had clothes for Ukraine, which were, much more mild climate than Mongolia. We had trench coats, and that was about it for warmth. But going to Mongolia was a lot colder, and we hadn't prepared for that. So in the Mission Training Center, they had the purchasing agent, Maria Rosborough, took us out, and we went on a shopping spree. So we jumped in the MTZ van, and we went to REI and got, big winter coats and boots and pants. And I was like, we can go to these places, get cheaper prices. She goes, just go to one spot and get it done. So we came back that day, and we're unloading all this shopping bags into our dorm room, and it was really fun. And we had missionaries like, what are you guys doing? And we've got these big Celtic backpacks and expedition thermoses and expedition weight thermal underwear, and we had, fleece jackets and sorrel boots and these long coats, and it was definitely one of those. This is going to be an experience moments that we had in the Mission Training Center, and getting to Mongolia. Now, part of the change of assignment from Ukraine to Mongolia is that we had to stay an extra month in the Mission Training Center, not for language, because there was nobody in America that spoke Mongolian. So we learned Russian for 2 months. Then we had a third month where we learned how to teach English as a second language. So we went to schools, went to BYU and UVCC at the time, and American Fork High School for classes on how to teach English. So that took an extra month. So by the time we were ready to go to Mongolia, we were ready to leave the Mission Training Center. It had been 3 months and change, and we were pretty spent at the place. And so they'd asked me to be the travel leader, which normally is no big deal. But for Mongolia, they gave me $10,000 of traveler's checks. I had to meet a guy at the airport. We actually flew from Salt Lake to San Francisco to Tokyo, Tokyo to Beijing. We had to stay in Beijing for 2 days and then get to Mongolia. So it was not an easy trek. And Elder Maxwell had met us in the Mission Training Center and said, when you guys are in Beijing, spend a couple days there and see things. So that was the golden ticket right there. So I was a travel leader, so I had the plans for getting us at Beijing to the hotel for a couple nights, and had the money for a couple days, and we had a reception planned with the branch there, and tickets to Mongolia. And so I'm ready to go. I'm excited. So that morning I get up, and this is where one of my accident-prone issues as a child came back to bite me. Well, I had a cap in my tooth, and I broke my tooth out as a kid with a dictionary. So I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm flossing my teeth to get ready. We're supposed to be on the bus at 9 in the morning, I believe was the time to get to the airport. And our flight's at 11, I think, or 11:30. Flossing my teeth, and my front cap just crumbles, and I've got no tooth. Just a stub there. And I'm just freaking out. Everything's in my name. All the travel plans are in my name. And I need to get to Mongolia. I'm not going to miss this flight. So I run upstairs. First, I'm like, won't show anybody. I'll cover my mouth the whole time, and then I'll get it fixed in China. And then I thought, are you idiot? China? I'll have a gold tooth for several years, look like a pirate. So I run to the front desk, and I'm just panic mode. I'm like, I went, and I flossed my tooth, and the tooth fell out and crumbled. And so it's like 6:30 in the morning at this point. I'm like, relax, calm down. They got a book, and they open up, and there's one dentist, one of the Pinniger kids. He had a dentist office open at 7 in the morning, the earliest one open. So they had a van waiting for me, and they rushed me to the dentist's office. And by 7:30, I actually got in there. He numbed me up, or put the shots in. I wasn't quite numb. He said, want me to wait for the Novocaine to kick in or start working now? I'm like, start working now. So by 7:30, the numbness hadn't quite kicked in all the way, but I had a new tooth was walking out. And then I had to drive back 10 minutes later because I left my camera in the dentist's office. And made it back in time. I got to the airport to see my family, and my face was just numb. And I think I was probably numb until San Francisco. And so we got on the plane, and it was just exciting to get there. And we got through San Francisco easily and got to Tokyo. And that was a long flight over the Pacific. Elder Blanche, I think, was next to a Mormon hater. He was trying to, give a copy of the Book of Mormon, and it didn't go well. So we were trying to do our business, but we got to Beijing Thursday sometime, I think. Is that right? It was a Thursday. Go with the international date line and just the flight time. It was a long time to get there, and I don't even know how long it took. Hour to hour. So we went to Beijing late at night, and there was a member waiting there to meet us. He was an American-born Chinese, I think. Actually, no, he was from Hong Kong. Tony Wen, I believe was his name. He reserved us two big vans, and we stuffed all of our baggage. So we not only had our luggage for 2 years, plus the expedition supplies, we also had things the couples wanted us to bring for them. We also had to bring kitchen supplies for us, measuring cups and pitchers and knife sets and whatever you need to have were all in our luggage. So we had this, every missionary probably had 5 bags, and the bag overage fees were horrendous, but they'd give me the traveler's checks for part of that. So we loaded this van with all of our stuff, and we get into Beijing. We're driving in, and it's like a 4-lane road, and we're passing a car that's passing another car that's passing another car. And there's like 6 cars in this 4-lane road, and they're just cruising all around in Beijing at night. And we were just kind of in a bit of a shell shock into Beijing. And we get to the Holiday Inn Lido in Beijing, which is where a lot of the expats used to hang out, apparently. It was kind of the happening place. And ironically, I went there 10 years ago for work, and it's now kind of considered a dive. But it was really a cool place at the time. And so we get in there, and we're opening the curtains first thing in the morning, just looking out the window, being in communist China as a missionary, and looking around and seeing people riding their bikes, and they had their Chairman Mao pajamas they were still wearing. It was a very, very foreign place. And so we had a day to go and tour around. So got up that morning and went downstairs, and I think it was either the first thing in the morning or when we got back, but I think it was first thing in the morning, there was this mariachi band, and Mexican mariachi band in Beijing playing Carpenters on Top of the World with a heavy, Spanish accent. So such a feeling is coming over me. And, we kind of walked out. It was this apocalyptical moment of just nothing was congruent. And it was really a bizarre scene. And clearly this one of the band members had seen missionaries, or maybe it was a member. He smiled and nods and played the little plays faster for us. And so that was our first little look into China. And we caught a taxi to Tiananmen Square, and saw Tiananmen Square, and went to Forbidden City, which was just kind of wandered around not knowing what was there. And we walk up, and you want tickets? We said, sure. And tickets were really cheap, and they gave us a headset and put a headset on, and it was Roger Moore, who was James Bond, and he gave us this tour of the Forbidden City, which was really quite amazing. And we walked around Beijing for a while and had our shirts, ties, and name tags on. Didn't realize we're not supposed to have our name tags on walking through communist China. So there's a great picture of me with Chairman Mao in the background with my white shirt and name tag on in 1993 in still very communist China at that point. And so we went, and then that evening we had a reception with the local Beijing ward. There was a lot of Americans working there, and they had a branch there, I guess. And the Chinese who had joined the church outside of China weren't permitted to go to church with them on Sunday, and still aren't, but could come to activities like on a Wednesday. So we had a potluck dinner, and they all got to come together and meet us, and that was pretty neat. So that the next morning we're heading to Mongolia, and we're getting ready. I'm rooming with Elder Meyer, and he grabs some ticket, and it's very colorful. I said, "What ticket's that?" "A Mongolia ticket." I'm like, I don't have a Mongolia ticket. He's like, "You don't went through all my stuff, and I couldn't find it." Well, I'd given, I think, my jacket to the stewardess, and had fallen out on the plane, and stuff fell out. And I think my ticket must have fallen out at that point, because the mission office said they had it. So we called the mission office panicky, and they said, "Well, just go try to buy a new ticket." I'm a 19-year-old, never bought a plane ticket in my life, so we get down there, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And Elder Pearson, who was always a very good go-getter, he disappears, comes back 20 minutes later. "Here you go." "What's that?" "It's a ticket. I bought you one." So I'm like, "Good job." I think I was more reluctant to look stupid. Pearson just went up, bought me a ticket, and we paid him back with the mission funds we had. So at the same time, we had Tony Wen there, who was trying to negotiate down the price for our extra baggage fees. So they were trying to charge us like $1,000 for our bags. It was a lot of money. And he's like, no, poor missionaries, no money, poor missionaries, no money. And they kept badgering each other back and forth. Finally, the guy just waved us through, and so we got all those bags in without paying any additional fees, which was great. So we board the plane, and it's this Russian Aeroflot plane. It was a Tupolev, I thought was the name of the plane, but had the most legroom of any plane we had. And it was actually a very comfortable plane, but flying in a Russian plane is never quite a comforting experience. But I remember flying over and seeing Mongolia outside. Summertime, so the Mongolian prairie is very green. It was a very peaceful feeling of going to a place that I felt was right. And, opened the door, and I think we all kind of fought to see who was the first one out the gangway. I'm still not sure who it was, but it was just fun getting there and to see Mongolia. My first week of Mongolia, we got there a couple weeks before school started, so we had a little bit of time trying to get ourselves oriented. There were some senior couples who got there like a year to 9 months before we were there, I think. So they got things established. They were there teaching in schools or volunteering with the government. And so they had got us apartments rented and places to work at, and got a few things set up. But they said, okay, they give us a quick tour of the city. Now go figure things out. So it was like our first probably week we were there, and Elder Blanchard was my first companion. We were walking around, had our big Kelty backpacks on, and trying to find out where you buy bread and where you buy milk and what different stores were. So we've been walking around, and foreigners are very, especially Americans, were very new there. And enough folks could tell we were at least, not one ever knew we were not Mongolian, but look, they knew we were American or thought we were Russian, but they were trying to sell us something. So that whole day had been people change money. Like, no, you buy this, and a lot of kind of harassment. Like you might see when you go to a country where it's a little more impoverished at the time and people trying to sell you stuff. And that's how it was that first day. We were out shopping. And so Blanche and I had gone to the state department store up in the 3rd or 4th floor, looking at kitchen soap and bread or something like that up there. And Elder Blanchard, probably a good 15, 20 feet away, looking at different things. And he says, Elder Hansen, he said, some guy's trying to buy me a backpack in German, because we had a few folks try to buy the backpack. We thought, at least. We weren't quite sure what they were asking, but that's what we understood at the time. But he's asking me in German. Well, I'd taken 4 years of German. And so, I go up, wie geht's, and wie heißt du? Hello, how are you? Who are you? And, I introduce myself, and he, du bist missionary. I'm like, you're a missionary? I'm like, yeah. And so in Germany, he's telling us that he had met with the missionaries in Germany. I'm like, great. So we're trying to talk, and now my German's at this point pretty rusty, and we're talking church words, which you don't learn those in high school. And so I said to my companion, "Kas gesagt," which is Russian, means how do you say? And it was like Evangelia po-ruski, or po-niemiecki. How do you say gospel in German? I don't know. And the guy says, "Ty говоришь по-русски?" Do you speak Russian? I said, yeah, I speak some Russian. My Russian at the time was better than my German. And so we started speaking in Russian with this guy. And kind of find out, he was in Germany teaching school and met missionaries there and had lessons. And I said, well, so you need to come to church on Sunday. Here's where it is. I said, it's a beautiful service. You'll like it. You'll learn more about the church. And he looked at me and goes, no, you don't understand. And he says, yeah, чlen. So you don't understand. I'm a member. I said, you're a member? He said, yeah. He said, I was baptized. I said, you're baptized? Yeah, I was baptized. I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And he'd received, man was named Tufshin. And Tufshin had received a blessing that, from the missionary taught him that he would go to Mongolia and be able to find the gospel there. Well, at the time, there was no missionaries there. And so, but he had just gotten back a couple weeks before after taking a full semester or a year, I think, in Germany. And found us like the first week in our first week. And Ingtushin had 5 children, has 6 now, and we ended up teaching the family, and he baptized all of his children that were 8 and older, and we ended up teaching them in a combination of German, Russian, Mongolian, and English. We all kind of mixed, and we'd teach through Ingtushin, he would translate to the children. And I actually had Ingtushin at my house a few months ago, and he's still active, and kids are doing great, and so that was one of those great blessings to have kind of a foundation member. And we got to Mongolia, there was the 6th member had been baptized. We didn't realize there was that 7th member in the country there that no one knew about, and that he didn't know the church was even there because the presence was so small. So those are those little miracles you see on missions. So my calling was primarily to teach English in different universities. So my first year I taught at the Technical University in Mongolia. My students were all engineers, were oil engineers or civil engineers, and my job was to teach them English, though they weren't keenly interested in English. It was a required course, so that was a hard year to teach because they just didn't want to be there. And we would, of course, we'd do tests and grades. This wasn't just like a night course. This was actually a college course, had a curriculum. We had books we used, we had tests, and I remember doing a test, and I think the American view of tests is very different than the Mongolian one was. And I said, okay. I said, and we had the Mongolian, had pictures, what is this? And there's a piece of corn up there, Irten Shush, which is the Mongolian. I think we even translated it for him. Write the English word down. Well, they don't eat corn in Mongolia. And I look over and see one of the students, kind of shaking his head, and his friend behind him goes, K, A, R, N. So spelling corn in Cyrillic. I'm like, hey, it's quiet. So they were cheating in that class. And then the next year, so I got to teach in the same school for the full school year, but we had a companionship change in the middle of the year. So my companion went to a new school, and I got a different companion for that school. And then the second year, I got transferred to a different school to so the first school was the Techniki Nixergull, which means the Technical University. And the second year was at Orchan Godahelni Hovindetsergull, which is the Orchan Private Foreign Language School. And that was actually much easier to teach at because the students wanted to be there and wanted to learn English. And they were quite good. And I had 6 or 7 courses. And we also taught an American Studies class, which was just a load of fun. We'd pick a topic, dating, media, geography, history, and like we'd show a movie clip or something. We had one where we would teach American recreation, I think, or pop culture or something. And so we started off teaching about mean Elder Rogers, who had a lot of fun. So we start off, today we're going to talk about the American postage system, and doing a very dullest impression. And it's amazing. You put a letter in the mail, and you put an address and zip code and put a stamp on it, and 2 days it's there. Now, Mongolians have a postage system too, so they're kind of like, now we have a song about the post office. And then we had a big boom box there, and we put a tape in a push play, and we had Van Halen Right Now. And so it starts playing, and we start headbanging and slam dancing, and we had some pictures of things about what we do for fun. And so that was a fun class, and got to test the guys students on American things. And then even that class, we got asked to host a Halloween party. And so we ended up hosting a Halloween dance, and we did a piñata, and we did a turnip carving, because we couldn't find pumpkins, a turnip and watermelon carving contest. We had a costume contest. We had someone bring a scary movie to watch and in the room. So apparently I showed a radar movie to all my students. Apparently I didn't quite realize that at the time. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great school. And it was fun as a teacher because we got to be in the program at teaching meetings. We did grades, we did tests. And we actually met a lot of our investigators that way. We wouldn't talk about the gospel in class. We actually got asked a lot. What are you here? Well, we teach for our church. We're teaching you here. Well, tell us about your church. I said, no, not in class. I said, after class, you can ask us here. We're teachers. We agree to come and teach. We're going to teach. After class, you can ask, but not in class. And we earned a lot of respect that way because a lot of other missionaries for other Christian churches got into Mongolia coming as English teachers. And it was funny because they'd asked us, well, how'd you get a visa? And we said, well, so we wanted to teach about the church. And they said, will you teach English? And we said, sure, if we can teach about church afterwards. And they said, okay. And they were shocked because they had to lie about it and say, no, we're here to teach English. And so they'd get in the classroom and close the door and get a guitar out. I'm going to sing a song about a man named Jesus. And so they kind of lied to get in the front door. And I didn't like that. And so we did a very good job, I think, of keeping things separately, and had a lot of success that way. Early on, when I got to Mongolia, one of the senior couples connected us with the Scouts of Mongolia. And I'm not sure which ones of us were Eagle Scouts, but I know Elder Blanchard and I were the companionship that had 2 Eagle Scouts, and we're both enough into scouting that we were asked to volunteer with the Scouts of Mongolia, which was a great opportunity. I got to attend the local meetings and teach them, little chants, and teach them games, and we taught them fire starting and compass work. And one of the best byproducts of that was I got invited to a couple different scout camps. And one of the reasons why we were helping out was that the communists had a pioneer program, which was kind of almost a paramilitary early development program, kind of like a Hitler Youth for communists. Not quite as warm and fuzzy as the Boy Scouts. And they were transitioning out to a scouting program. And so we were helping with that transition process. And so I first got to go to the first one was a scout camp up at this big Pioneer Resort area. It was a giant building had probably 300 rooms in it, a big kitchen, and called Narndalsoslen, the Narndal resting area. I got to go there for, I think it was 2 weeks actually. Had some of the missionaries cover our classes and went there in early spring, and got to spend 2 weeks at scout camp, and it was a ball. We taught fire starting and compasses with the scouts there, and games and things, and did skits, and it was a lot of fun. And the head elder, I wasn't technically in a mission. Mongolia was we had one of the senior couples was kind of in charge, and he said if you need to do companion splits, go ahead and go on your own just to get the scout camp stuff done. So I remember one day I was teaching fire starting to the scouts, and I look up top of this mountain, and not a huge mountain, big enough, and I knew where my companion was because the light was up there. He was teaching compass skills up there, but he's way up there by himself, and as missionaries, you're always supposed to be together. And and then later that week, I hadn't seen my companion since like 8 that morning, and there was a little store that was in this a small little, I wouldn't even call it a town. There's a few other buildings away from this area that supported it. So I'm walking to the store, and I walk by, and I'm with a group of scouts, and he's with a group of scouts, Ella Mortensen, Elder Hansen, just kind of walked by. It was such a great time, We really had a fun time with the scouts. There definitely was some differences in the programs. Were a little more yelling at kids than the Mormon Scout program was, but cute kids. It was a co-ed program too. That made it a little unique, where you did have some girls who were definitely 16-year-olds, and you're 19, and so it's a little awkward at times. But it was kind of a cool experience there. And then I went to a scout camp the next year. Was that year or was it that summer? Might have been the end of that summer actually. And that was a 10-day scout camp out in the countryside. We're actually in tents, and that was a good experience. Though we had gotten there, we'd taken off late, and I didn't bring. They said there'd be plenty of food. They just don't bring food, so I was not prepared despite the scout motto. And so we got to meet with all the scouts. It took us 4 hours to meet everybody, and then a couple hours to get there. By the time we get there, I'm just parched. I haven't had anything to drink forever. And I said, anything to drink? We'll have tea ready in about 10 minutes. I'm like, tea? I'm like, can we get some water? Oh, yeah, it'll be a couple hours to get some water. I'm like, so we're out in the countryside, and I grew up in the mountains hiking, and often drank from streams. Like, well, here's a stream. So I went and, found a little running spot in the stream and took a drink. And then realized the nearest mountains are probably 200 miles away, with thousands and thousands of head of livestock between here and there. And within 3 hours, I was vomiting uncontrollably, and I was sick as a dog for probably 2 days, just laid in my tent. So here's a big, tough American scout. The first 2 days, I was just sick as a dog. So that was a lousy experience that started that camp. I eventually got better and popped up, and the kids were pleased to see that I was actually more than just a vegetable. And I had Ella Blanchard with me at that camp. We had a great time with that camp and did a lot of things. They played war, which was like a massive version of Capture the Flag, but they would actually hide in different banks of trees, and they would yell, go. They all come running at each other, yelling this big war cry. And it was a view of the old Mongolian battle tactics. It was actually intimidating, but it was a great experience. We actually had a couple members of the scouting program join the church. I recall one while I was there, and one joined after I had left. He went and found missionaries with our experience, and he became a stake president of the second stake out there at Yabold. But it was a great experience to work with the scouts of Mongolia when I did. So Mongolia was a communist country under the Soviets' thumb for a lot of years, and so when you go from a atheistic communism to freedom and religion showing up, there's always a humble people to be found there, and that's how we found the Mongolians. They were very easy to teach. We actually were holding people back from being baptized, wanting to make sure they knew what they were getting into, understood the obligations, but it was a highly successful mission, and it wasn't anything I think I could take credit for. People were coming out of the woodwork, and you just had to teach them. So we had a mission office in our same apartment building. We had the 6 of us were in the same building, same apartment, just different floors, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. And then on the first entrance is where some senior couples lived. And one of those rooms had then become apartments became a mission office where we had 3 rooms to teach in, a library, and a kitchen, which we also used as a teaching room as well. So we just go by and we schedule our appointments there. And we have members come in and we just stay there, and they would come every hour. And we'd some days have, we'd teach school, come back, and then from like 2 to 9, we'd have a discussion every hour and just go nonstop, and then eat at the end of the day. And it was just a great experience, and such a humble, teachable people. We didn't learn Mongolian. I didn't learn Mongolian until my full year there. Others were much faster at picking it up. I was better at Russian than I think the other elders were, so because I had some in high school. So I relied on Russian probably longer than others felt comfortable doing. So we'd have translators for us. And even when we didn't have translators, my Mongolian was bad enough that I had people who would convey my nonsensical Mongolian into church talk. And so that also built a good relationship between the 2 different people, who then had someone to fellowship them as they came into the church. And so we had some great success in Mongolia with the members. And I recall once I baptized my pool on a Saturday. So I think I baptized like 9 people that Saturday. And it was a good group, but I taught everybody. I had no one left in my pool. And so I had no discussions that week set up. So I went to someone on Sunday and said, can you bring me 3 friends, bring me 5 friends, bring me 2 friends. And by Tuesday, I had 25 people in my pool. And so that's how it was. And so you really can't take credit for any missionary work when you say, can you please bring me? And they did. And the joke was, don't tell Mongolians what the rest of the world is like, because they'll stop working so hard with their friends, because they were just, a strong, faithful people. We had, activity rate was pretty high the first couple of years because we knew everybody. We knew where they were. We knew their background. We knew their struggles. We knew their family. And so, you didn't come for a couple of weeks. We show up and knock on your door and say, hey, come back to church. And so it was a neat experience to do things that way. So when I got to Mongolia, there was, I think, 7 members in the country, and we left. I can't remember, it was 250 or 350 or somewhere. I think it was around 300 something and change of members in the country. And they were splitting the one branch into 2 branches in town or 3 branches in town, and then a branch out of, I think it's 2 branches in Ulaanbaatar and 1 branch in, I think it was Irnet or Darkhan, one of the other cities. I think it was Irnet. And then they announced a mission and called the mission president. So we saw a lot of growth in Mongolia, and I've got countless stories which are in my journal, which are too many to tell here, of amazing members that I met and humble people, and some of the great experiences working with the church and growing there, and what a blessing that was. Midway through my mission, my mom would do monthly missionary updates in our ward newsletter and talk about the missionaries. And one month featured the heading, Brett was kidnapped this month. The story behind me being kidnapped was, I was at a P Day, and we want to go and see some things around Ulaanbaatar, go for a hike. And there's a couple of member girls we had taught and said, well, we can show you a nice hike. I said, well, we can't go hiking just with you, so we can find a group to go with. That's okay. Okay, well, we've got a male friend who's going to take us on a hike. So, okay, great. So we pack up our hiking stuff and start walking out of the town. We took a bus somewhere. He goes, well, he's going to meet us on the outskirts of town. He's driving through. Okay, great. So we're walking along, and we're getting towards the road where he's supposed to pick us up. And I said, driving through where? We're in Ulaanbaatar. There's no other town around. It's not like you're driving from Salt Lake to Provo when you pick you up in Sandy. There's Ulaanbaatar, and then there's hundreds of miles of nothing, and then there's small little towns. So where are you driving through? They go, well, there's actually no one else. We just want to go hiking, and your rules wouldn't let us go. So, we're going hiking together. So at this point, we're almost at the mountain. I said, well, we're going to hike, my old companion and I, and you guys are going to hike. We'll just kind of be different spots. Like, fine, whatever. So we start hiking, and of course, you naturally end up in the same hiking spot as we're heading up this mountain. We come to a big gate, and there's a big official government-looking building. Like, okay, we're not going to go there. So we walk down to the next canyon over, start walking up the next canyon over. Well, the gated canyon, the canyon we went up, kind of merged together at the very top. So we're hiking up this canyon, get to the very top of this mountain, and look down, and some soldiers pop out of the trees with rifles and aim them at us. And the girls say, "Let's run." Like, this guy's got a rifle. Now, if we run down the backside, he has to go up and come down, but by the time he comes down, he's got a pretty clear shot, and he looked kind of bored. And my concern is that a Mongolian soldier who was kind of bored and had some white guy to shoot at might think it's some Russian spy and take a few shots. So I'm like, let's just go down. So we put our hands up in the air, and they take us down by gunpoint down the mountain. Well, we'd apparently stumbled into some parliamentary and rest resort area. So it was where the parliament, the elite got to go and have a spa and whatever, but it was guarded by soldiers, and we had crossed some line somewhere. So they took us down and searched our bags, and they took my pocket knife, and one of the girls had a bread knife, and they put us in a truck. And the girl said, "Don't let them know you speak Mongolian, because they're going to think you're spies." So, we had the girls translate for us, where we teach English and we translate that. And so they put us in the back of this truck for a couple hours, if I recall. And they're pulling stumps and doing different chores with me and a bunch of soldiers and my companion and the two girls back there. And they were really nice. We were like, "We'll teach you English, you teach us Mongolian." So, hello, and they go, "Hello," and yes, and we teach them a few words, and we say, "Now Mongolian." And we're speaking pretty good Mongolian at this point. And I say, "Sain bano," which means hello. I'm like, "Sien bana oh, yeah, good job. Okay." And so we were playing dumb for a little while, and then they got done with us and took us to the front gate, opened the back of the truck, and we jumped out, and they closed the gate behind us, and we walked off. I tried to get my knife back, never got my knife back. I think the heads of the mission were just happy that nothing worse happened on that trip. But that was I wasn't kidnapped per se. I think I was more arrested at gunpoint, but nothing bad happened beyond that. Another fun experience in Mongolia was we were really in the same town the whole time. I was in Ulaanbaatar. One of the companionships, there was 12 missionaries the second year by then, and so 2 of the 12 got to go to open up. I think it was Erdenet, but it might have been Darkhan, one of the other cities. Rogers and Birch had gone out there to open a branch up, but the rest of us had really been in Ulaanbaatar the entire time. I got to go to two scout camps that were maybe 40 miles out of town, but this is a country that's third the size of the U.S., and Ulaanbaatar is probably 2 miles by 7 miles. It's not a very big town, so we really hadn't left much. And my first companion was transferred to the couch. My first move was almost a year into my mission, and I moved about 3/4 of a mile away, and then I moved back to the apartment above the one I started, and then I went home. That was my entire mission move, so we were rather stagnant. And Hong Kong, who was my mission head, it was in the Asia Area Mission, which was headed by the Asia Area Presidency in Hong Kong. And they said, summertime school's out, take a cultural excursion, go see someplace in Mongolia. Fantastic. We all got to pick a vacation. So Elder Mortens and I wanted to go to a place called Moron in Hufgleimek, which they call Little Switzerland, and mountainous area. And we had a couple of members who had family from up there, and we took Elder and Sister Cook, who later became mission presidents of Mongolia, with us. And we made it an adventure, and boy, that was an adventure. It started off getting in the airplane, and we're taxiing on the runway, and the door pops open to the airplane. It's a small little 21-seater, and door pops open, a person jumps in, closes the door, and squats down. And 1 or 2, but there was people, it might have been 2. And the plane kind of starts moving, then it stops, and the door opens up, and some Mongolian guy grabs this guy, pulls him out of the plane, and slams the door, and then the vroom, plane takes off. Now, the plane's this size, you have to actually watch weight as well. That's an important part. So this guy jumping in is kind of nuts. So about 5 minutes into the flight, we hear rumbling from the back, and the luggage was loaded into the back door, which looked like a lavatory area. But it was a big storage bin. And out of the storage bin, underneath all the suitcase, out pops this guy, just squats there on the floor. There's no seat there because seats are all taken. And when they came by, gave everybody a drink. They gave the guy a drink too, and he got off and got to go. Yeah, I think Mongolia was kind of these places where if you got caught before you did whatever it was, then you just said, you caught me, fine. But if you made it, hey, you won, good job. And so he got to free ride to Hoofskull. So we went to Hoofskull, and that was an adventure. We stayed the first night at a friend's house, and we all had different beds there. And we took off to this mountaintop resort area, which resorts use very loosely. It was a bunch of tough sheds, like a little shed you'd have in your backyard that had a couple of beds in there, and a padlock. You can padlock on the inside or the outside, whether you're in or you're out. And beautiful area, but couple experiences. The first, we get there and it's a beautiful spot, and we said, Elder Cook, can we go on a hike? He said, oh, Mary and I guess you guys can go on a hike. We're like, okay, 2 elders, 2 16-year-old girls, sure, why not? So our mission was very uncommon that way. We had a lot of weird companion splits at times with school, and perhaps not the most kosher of missions, but everything was proper. It just perhaps didn't look proper at times. So we're off on a little hike, walking around this mountaintop, and suddenly these wild dogs come up on us, and just right in our face, and just growling and barking at us. And I wasn't sure if it was a wild dog or a wolf, frankly, at the time. And I think the members said they think they were dogs. And I'm kind of freaking out there. And my companion, who was a rancher, he grabbed a rock, and one of the members started chucking rocks at this dog. And it got a few good hits on the dog when it took off. But that was kind of my first scare right there, because it was right there and growling at us. And it's a bit of fear of dogs. So we go, and that night, there at dinner, there was like a big group dinner. There were some men there, including one police, who started hitting on the girls. And their intentions were quite clear and not quite appropriate, for sure. And it was definitely risky for the girls. And so we're in the shed. We're actually in a tough shed with the cooks. The cooks had the 2 beds, and we're sleeping on the floor. And actually, no, there's 4 sets of beds in there. And so the girls in the next room over, in the next shed over, 5 or 6 feet away, and we hear these guys come by trying to get the girls, and they, you come out, and like, no, and they're, cajoling and harassing and threatening a little bit. And so Elder Cook says, well, go check on the girls. So we head out and lock Elder Cook's door so no one can get him until we can get back inside. Go to the girls' room, get their padlock, go inside, lock the door. And as we're sitting there getting the girls, getting stuff packed up, the group of drunks come back. And they'd come back a few times at this point, and they were drunk as can be, and one was a cop, and they're getting mad now. You come out now, come out and get out, come with us and party with us and do other things with us. And so we're like, so we'll tell the girls to be quiet. And so one of the girls kind of starts crying and like whimpering a bit, just scared. And so my companion grabs her, he's holding her. I've got my buck knife out because there's a guy who's got a knife trying to get in the window in the back, and there's curtains closed. You can see this silhouette of a knife there. So I've got my knife out, and I'm standing by the door in case we're getting some kind of a knife fight, like I know I'm going to do in a knife fight. And the other girl is there talking to her cousin, saying, it's going to be okay, be all right. And so we're kind of sitting there in this scene. It probably was 20 minutes, 30. It was a long time sitting there. We're kind of waiting there, and they finally go. We run over, unlock the cook's padlock, let him in, and I remember the first words Elder Cook said, what in the devil are you playing at? We're like, look, the drunk guys are coming. Let's, we gotta hurry get the girls over. So we hurry get the girls over, go back to the tough shed and lock the tough shed, which they should have noticed the shed was locked now from the outside, not the inside, but they didn't notice that. So we run back in the cook's place and lock the door. And the drunk guys came back a couple more times. Were pounding on that wood shed there. And, Elder Cook was quite mad at us for clowning around, but we thought we were being responsible. We're trying to save the girls. And the next day, we had breakfast, and the drunk guys were there and didn't remember a thing. We played volleyball the next day. It was this really bizarre adventure. We went and saw a couple more things. Went and saw Lake Hoof School the next day and slept in a Mongolian ger. And then when it came time to go, we got to the airport, and I should recall there was getting in the airport, there was just 2 Americans in front of us talking about how sick they were of these missionaries coming to Mongolia and Asia and trying to change the people. And one of the guys says, I even met a Mongolian in India who was a Mormon. Can you believe that? I'm like, thinking I baptize that guy, And so, and my companion and I were talking to Elder Cook, and Elder Cook, actually, Richard E. Cook, spoke about that in a conference talk one year. But that was us at the airport waiting to fly out of hoof school. Well, we were waiting, and they said, no plane today. What do you mean no plane today? It's no plane today. When's the plane coming? Tomorrow. And they had checked our bags. They wouldn't give us our bags back. And the cook's like, we said, there's no plane coming. Planes don't just not come. Like, it's Mongolia. They just don't come sometimes. So he was quite frustrated. He grabbed one of the members and had her translate for us and for him. And they said, yep, no plane coming today. So begrudgingly, we went back to the girls' family's house, and we stayed an extra night. And got up the next day, and the plane was there finally. And we pack in this plane, and there are most flights I've been in around the world are just normal planes. Even the Russian Tupolev coming in wasn't a bizarre plane. This plane was like, it looked like it had been gutted of most of the niceties of a plane, and there were goats where you normally would have like the kitchen. There's people with goats in there, and it was definitely one of these bizarre little scenes of whatever you had. And there's a lot of folks just standing up there who didn't have seats, but just jumped on the plane and took off. And it was definitely an experience. Had a little vacation there. We saw some of the chaos of parts of Mongolia, but it was an absolute beautiful area. You really had a fantastic time, and not many missionaries get a full week-long vacation on their mission. We had actually hoped that the Mongolian mission would be extended a little bit of time, though after 2 years you do kind of get burned out, and there's always some bureaucracy you have to deal with in life, which can be frustrating. But the country, we were excited and thought 3-year mission would be awesome. But we'd asked to extend, but they said, no, you got time to head out. My parents and Elder Meyer's parents wanted to come pick us up. And so we had planned a fun little get-together at the countryside with them, an award activity. And I get a call I'm getting ready to go pick up my parents, and I get a call, we missed the plane in Beijing. My dad always cuts things close, but not realizing you can't cut things that close on an international flight in China. But he got to the gate, and the plane was there, and it was an hour and a half before the flight was supposed to take off, and they wouldn't let him on. And so he missed that flight. My mom was mad, but we went to the countryside without my parents and kind of had a fun picnic with the members. But had my folks there the last few days and got to meet a lot of people, and it was a great touching time with all of us. And we had, as we had grown the church from nothing to a lot, and all 6 of us, the first 6 were leaving at the exact same time. It was kind of this big farewell ceremony, and it was fun and embarrassing at lots of times, because we had a time where they come by and say goodbye, and it ended up being this autograph session where we had all of us 6 around a table, and people line up behind which mission they wanted to have sign their notebook, and we signed their notebook, and they'd write something in our notebook and hand it to them, and they'd go back and give us gifts, and all these gifts behind us, and I had this very celebrity kind of feel to it, which was touching and slightly embarrassing at the same time. But these were our friends. We had spent years with them, and unlike missionaries who got transferred all the time, we were in the same ward for 2 years and really knew everybody in the ward and knew everybody there. And we'd had ward activities together. We'd had home evenings every Wednesday night actually with groups. We had hosted our house. They were in family meeting groups. We taught their friends and baptized their families and helped them through struggles. And we're many of their school teachers as well. And so it was a very close group. And so leaving was quite hard. And I recall I got to the airport. It was packed with my friends and my students and members, and it was this great thing. And I had an extra duffel bag just full of gifts I'd received on the way out. It was like an army duffel bag, like over the shoulder bag, like you see sailors carrying, and it probably weighed 80 pounds because it had books in there and some marble sculptures, and it was just nuts. But I took it as a carry-on because I didn't want to pay the baggage overage fees, which were already pretty bad. So I'm walking like it weighs nothing. And it was so heavy, and and I put it on the plane. I had to pack that around all through China on the way out, because we went and saw China on the way out. But in Mongolia, as we were walking towards the plane, which is on the runway, the old style, you walk up the stairs. At the plane, there was this group of, 40 or 50 or more members there, and they were, and my companion and I were leaving earlier than the other two because their parents weren't picking them up. Because their parents were picking them up, they got permission to leave like 3 or 4 days earlier. So we were the first ones to leave, and so they had this sign, "Goodbye, Hansen and Meyer," and they were singing Hansen and Meyer, and I think singing "I'm a Child of God," and it was just this beautiful, touching moment to see the people whose lives you impacted and who impacted your lives. These friends that I'm friends with, quite a few of them still today. As you left Mongolia, I remember just leaving in the airplane, kind of crying, looking out the window, looking ahead and forward to seeing my family and into the new stage of life, but, saying goodbye to the people of Mongolia, and that was an amazing experience. And I have so much I could say and write about Mongolia, and I one day will get all that down, but for my life today, that's probably enough to say about Mongolia. So my first job out of law school was at a small firm called Matson and Metcalf. I had a couple offers from a firm in California, a general practice firm in Salt Lake, and then a small patent boutique in Salt Lake. And I thought that was the best chance to get the kind of education, training I needed to have, and I was drafting patents there. And I can't say I was terribly happy drafting a patent. You draft a patent, it takes about 40 hours to do one. So you get in your room, you close the door, and you basically can type for a week. Well, that's kind of boring, typing for a week. So I tried to make it interesting as much as possible, but it wasn't a great time. And then the firm was having some struggles. With September 11th, the economy took a tank a bit, and our clients had started to pull back in a lot of their work. And so one of our key clients also went to a competing firm, and a firm which was growing fast suddenly started to stop growing, and there's just no work. You go and there's nothing to do, and so we'd organize files and look at other things, but there was no work to be had. And so, I was like, should we start looking for other jobs? And they said they had a shareholder or a firm meeting. There's only 15 attorneys there. I said, don't panic, don't start looking for jobs. We've been through rough times before. It's going to be all right. All right. So a couple days later, I get called in. Hey, Brett, can you come into my office? Was the managing shareholder. I walk in there, and there were all three partners sitting there. I'm like, oh, this can't be good. And they're a little bit teary-eyed and said, well, the economy's been bad, and we're at no choice. We have to lay a couple of people off, and you're one of them. And they said, you're the youngest guys, and you're mechanical. And the belief in the world, and it's probably accurate, is that mechanical stuff you can figure out. The other two guys my age were biotech and computer science, which are the niches they wanted to build up. So I was a natural guy to go, even though my hours were, I think, the highest of the associates. And so I had bought a car the night before. I had just bought a house, and the firm would give you $10,000 towards the down payment of the house that was forgiven over a 5-year period. And so I'd been there for a year and a half, but only bought the house like 5 months before, so I had most of that loan sitting there. And if you quit, you had to, if you left the firm, you had to pay that back. I also had, my wife was pregnant and was due in 2 months. So I had all this, and I just lost my job. And they said, okay, we're laying off. And now that housing loan, you got to pay us back. I'm like, wait a minute. You fired me. You laid me off. I didn't quit, which was the intent of it. Looked at the fine print, and of course, lawyers in their fine print. It didn't say if they laid me off. They said if I left the firm, and I left the firm. So they said, here's a job, and you owe us $8,000. They forgave $2,000 because I was there. I'd been there for at least a year, and even though I didn't take the loan out till later, it was close enough. I'm like, you took my job. I can't pay you back the $8,000. Well, we'll work out a schedule. So I called my wife, and she wasn't home. And this is before cell phones were around. So I called my dad. I said, Dad, and I'd carpooled that. I've been carpooling to work, so I didn't have a car downtown. We had a single car for our family. I said, Dad, I just got laid off. Can you come pick me up downtown? And he'd been at Kennecott when they laid everybody else off, so he kept his job, but he'd seen that before. So we were standing there with a couple boxes of all my stuff waiting there on the curb, and one of the secretaries, who was a friend of mine and had done some work with me at the firm, she goes, oh, hey, what you doing? I said, I just got laid off. She's like, funny, because I was always a joker. I'm like, nope, I got laid off. And part of me wanted to cry, but I'm like, I'm not giving him the satisfaction of me crying. So I mean, like a school kid there. My dad to pick me up, and he picks me up and takes me home, and I get home and my wife comes back. Oh, you're home. What you doing? I'm like, I got laid off, and she's laughing. I'm like, nope, I got laid off. So that was definitely a frightening work experience. I had 2 children, 1 on the way, had a house, had a car. I didn't know what to do. My dad's advice was, some guys get laid off, they sit and they wallow for a month. He said, get up, put your suit back on, start calling around for jobs. And so I had called a bunch of firms, tried to get interviews, and even put a resume in for some firms out east. And a couple days into my search, I got a call from a firm, Workman Nidegger, which my firm that I got laid off from originally broke off from Workman Nidegger. And they were the dark side. The Workman Nidegger was this bad, evil firm I'd always heard about. And you never want to go work with them. Well, they called and said, I heard you lost your job, and we're looking for somebody here. Like, you can't turn that down. So I went and interviewed, and within 3 weeks I had a different job. I was moved from patent drafting to patent litigation, and I got a raise. So it was one of these blessings in life. And what was interesting, before I got the job at Workman Nidegger, I had left some stuff in one of my drawers. I left so fast, didn't check all my drawers. So, hey, come back and pick up your stuff. So I came back to pick up my stuff. And once a month they'd have cake in the office. They'd have cake for whose birthday it was. So I walk in, I'm getting my stuff, and they said, "You want to join us for cake?" And I was like, how do you face people who've laid you off and taking your job? And I'm like, I'm not going to let anybody get me down. So I'll join you for cake. So I sat there and took a cake and talked and ate cake. And then I got home, I had emails from some of my peers at the firm like, how did you sit with these guys who fired you and just ate cake with them? Like, it's just life. But, on the nice end, about a year later, they got back on their feet and called me back and offered me my job back. And, I said, thank you, but no thank you. I like what I'm doing. I'm doing well here at this firm, so thank you, but no. So that was my first job experience and being laid off. So the firm that hired me, the dark side, the story's not all untrue necessarily. It was a sweatshop. Workman Nidegger was kind of nicknamed Workman Day and Nidegger, and that's really what it was. I was working gusto hours, but when you got laid off, you want to make sure you don't lose a job again. And what I didn't realize at the time, but I learned a little later, was that there was a partner there who was notoriously hard to work with, and she was chewing through associates, and so I was essentially fodder for that. Because I already passed the bar exam, I had my license, they didn't have to pay for an attorney to get trained up and then just to have them quit. So they fired me to work with her until I burned out and they'd hire someone else. So I was basically just, it was temporary, but I was hired until I burned out. And it was tough. This woman was on my back all the time. If I'd make a mistake, she'd come in and chew me out, take 2 steps out of my office, come back and chew me out some more. And I'd be in church and get called, you need to come in, we got to work on these depositions. Headed on Sundays. Now I'd be there by 7 in the morning and leave at 7 at night and then work for a couple hours in the evening. So I was really working away doing patent litigation, and it was a miserable existence. I was gaining weight. I had dreams of getting in a car accident so I could actually rest in the hospital. But once my kids said, "Dad, is Dad dead?" asked their mom, and she said, "Well, why? Why do you think Dad's dead?" "Well, Dad's when you don't see anybody anymore," and I was just gone all the time. And it was a rough job, and I was able to provide for the family quite well, but I just wasn't able to provide myself that well. And each year I was really one of the highest billing associates, and I got on a trial against Nautilus Sports Equipment, who owned Bowflex, and it was we had a bunch of trials going back and forth, and I was one of our trials suing them, and I was basically kind of given this case to run myself, kind of separate from my boss, and that case went all the way to trial, and we crushed them. And we got about an $8 million verdict, and we set the record for the largest false marking penalty at the time, and we did really well, and that was good enough of a hit. It made them Nautilus settle the case where they were suing us, and so it was a big success, and because of that, I made partner the next year. There was like 10 people up for partner, and only 2 of us made it. And so on the letterheads kind of shows your hierarchy, and I was at the bottom because where you join the firm is where you're on the letterhead. But once you make a partner, I moved to all the associates who'd been no longer than me, and made it to the lower rung of the partner. So it was a fun leap to do that, and I got to run my own cases at that point. So it made life a little more bearable, but it was definitely a tough place to work at. You had free sodas, which just got you fat. I had a candy jar to put there, and I'd pour a pound of M&Ms in there in the daytime for anyone who came in my office to eat M&Ms. Well, no one would be in my office, and by the end of the day, the M&Ms were gone. So I definitely packed on the weight and packed on the stress, and that was a tough time in my life at that law firm. So while I was at Workman Nidegger, there was a conference. The American Bar Association had a bar conference in Hawaii. And we all had a budget we had for continuing education, so a good chunk of the firm went to Hawaii for the conference. I think we didn't go to many classes, and we what enough to make it so we could legally do that, but we played a lot too. But the last night I was flying home, I had this great week where I just had no stress. My wife was with me, and we're sitting on Waikiki Beach, and the moon was coming up over Diamond Head or going down, but right behind Diamond Head there was a Polynesian band right behind us with the tiki torches lit, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the Hawaiian version. It was just this amazing picturesque scene. And I remember just grabbing that sand saying, I can't go back to that lifestyle. I need something different. Well, I get in to work that day. Actually, we flew on a Sunday night, and I worked got the red eye, and I got back into work Monday and went straight to work. And I got a call from a headhunter, and they said, hey, I'm looking to fill a position in New Hampshire, in Hanover. Do you know Hanover? Yeah, I know Hanover because my son had spent some time there when in the hospital, and when I was in law school. And we talked about going for New Hampshire for years. I'm like, yeah, I'd be interested. So filled up my resume and turned it in and did a phone interview with a guy named Mike Shapolsky, and within 10 minutes he said, I need you up here to talk to you. So I flew out to New Hampshire and interviewed with a company called Hypertherm and for in-house counsel job. And the interview went really well. And they extended me an offer, and that was a chance to go from the corporate billable hour world, which is really tough, to a in-house position, which is definitely much easier on the family time. So I accepted the offer, and we got up there and we did some online house hunting and whittled it down to maybe 20 houses. And then our real estate agent whittled it down to 12 houses. 80s houses you think are good, but they're not what you want. And went house hunting the first day, and we had this picture of, we lived in New England before, and there's a quintessential New England picture, and then there is the reality. And they don't always line up, but in New England, this part of New England, we thought in Hanover, we could find what we were looking for. I went house hunting, at each house was just a disaster. It was a wrong spot. It wasn't right. And by the end of the night, my wife was just crying in the hotel room. And the first hotel we went to was this hotel room to look house hunting. It looked like a prison cell. So we left that hotel, went to the Super 8, I think, which was a better hotel. If that gives you some context, or the Comfort Inn is what it was. And so I'm like, if we're frustrated, let's just stay in Utah. And I kind of wanted to stay in Utah. She wanted to leave. And so we're like, yeah, let's just tell them, thank you, but no thank you for the job offer. We made a mistake. It's not going to work for us, which happens because it's in a remote area. And I'm like, my old firm will keep me. They have no problem. They like me a lot. So we said, yeah, let's not do that. So the next day, our real estate agent was going to come to pick us up. We're like, we've got a day. May as well just finish it up, look at some houses. We're not going to stay here. So the next house we go and look at is, as we're driving down, it's like, oh, this is a pretty area. Oh, this is a nice street. This is kind of what we're looking for. Oh, the house is beautiful. I'm walking the garage. I'm like, okay, this is it. And we ended up buying that house in a town called Grantham, and ended up making that move really, really easy for us. And I remember we finally moved there right after Thanksgiving, which my mother was very upset for us moving before Christmas. But we wanted to be able to. We thought trying to enjoy Christmas while packing would be an awful experience. Let's get there before Christmas and have the Christmas time to bond us to the area, which actually worked out quite well. And so as we get there, and it's this new place, I recall that first weekend I was there, not having billable hours, not having a law firm, not having a boss calling me all the time. I was like, I'm free. And the deadlines in my office were so much easier and it's easygoing. I'm like, it was nice to decompress and be human again. And have never regretted that choice. I took a huge pay cut, but the lifestyle was much more important to me than the job. So I've now been with Hypertherm almost 10 years now as in-house counsel, and it's been a great job, and really enjoyed it. A good chance to actually engage in business where I get to help business ideas and planning. Some trademarks I've helped develop are on products. Ideas of mine are in products. I've got some patents in my name. I've got to travel around the world to do anti-counterfeiting and training and trade shows. It's been a fantastic job, and with life circumstances changing a few years ago, about 4 years ago now, I realized I wanted to be in Utah and not New Hampshire anymore. And so I went to, my boss had known this was the case for years, and so he developed me into a position where I was working remotely even while being in New Hampshire. And so I went to the boss and said, hey, I'm going to move to Utah. You can keep me, I can work remotely, or I can find a different job. They go, well, let's give it a try for a year. That's almost 3.5 years ago now, and it's been great working from home, seeing my children all the time, and having the flexibility to live life now, but see the company grow and be successful. So it's been great thus far. So when I was in BYU, I always moved around a lot, hoping to find the right one. And my junior year, I always wanted to be the south side of campus. It always felt right to me. And I moved in on a Saturday, ran to the football game, saw it that night, went back, and then got ready for church and walked out. And my roommate said, hey, the girls next door are cute, or across the street, let's go show them where church is. I'm like, great, because I don't know where church is either. And walking, there's 2 cute girls there, and there was one in the back. I'm like, oh, she's really pretty. Her name was Adrian. And sooner rather than later, we started dating. She had a missionary. She dear John'd him, and I can't remember. I asked her out a few times, and she was just always busy. So we finally made it on a date. I think we actually ended up kissing before our first date. She had some bad news from home, and I had hugged her, and we ended up kissing that night. And so we started spending time together and dating that fall semester at BYU in 1996. And she went home for the semester to Oregon for winter semester, just wanting to think about things. And we started talking a little bit about marriage. And so I flew out to see her, I think twice, and then I flew her out and proposed to her in March. And when I was planning to propose, I wanted to get her a ring, but I was having just enough money to pay for tuition and housing and a little bit of money on the side to fly up and see her, but not much. And so I remember, getting on my knees and saying, okay, Father, I really want to marry this girl, but I have no money. Can you help me figure something out? I don't know what to do. Go to class, come back the day, there's a weird letter in the mailbox, and I open it up. And it said, congratulations, so you've been awarded such and such scholarship you applied for 2 years ago. You're awarded back all of your tuition and book money. So, it was this beautiful miracle where I had enough money to ask her to marry me. And I was trying to find a place to ask. I was going to ask her by a waterfall, but I had this fear of dropping the ring in the waterfall. So I went downtown and walking around, went to the McCune Mansion. And I got on my knee and asked her to marry me, put the ring out, and I dropped the ring. And so it bounced, and I caught it on the first bounce. And, will you marry me? And she said yes. And Adrian and I were married July 17th, 1997, and started our family there. So Adrian and I had 5 children. We had Patrick Henry with Locke, Olivia, Charlotte, and Ronan. And it kind of went, we had the first 2 about a year apart, the next one 2 years apart, the next one 3 years apart, next one 4 years apart. So I think we slowly began to, have fewer and fewer kids. And we had Patrick while I was between my first and second year of law school. We actually were living in Palo Alto for most of the summer doing an internship, and I lived in a garage, a bay of a garage that was framed out, and we had a hide-a-bed, and you pull the hide-a-bed out to sleep on it, and you put it up to have your living room, actually Locke was born in Palo Alto. I apologize. So we had Locke. He wasn't born there. Locke was. We were pregnant with Locke while doing my internship in Palo Alto, and so we had Patrick with us. But in this little small place, when Adrian was there, she would bounce between families in Oregon because there just wasn't, and California because there wasn't enough place to actually stay in this little garage. And so when we were there, Patrick would like eat in the shower because he'd throw his food around, and the whole place was carpeted, so we had no place to. There's no kitchen. There was basically a small fridge and a microwave, and that was the entire house. So it was this itty bitty little Spartan place where Adrian had to sleep on a hide-a-bed with Locke. We had Patrick actually. She was pregnant with Patrick and had him in Salt Lake between my first and second year. San Francisco is between my second and third year. So I worked in Salt Lake City doing engineering work between my first and second year, and Adrian had Patrick there, and our family doctor and close family friend was her OBGYN, so we had Patrick out in Salt Lake City, and his due date was the same day school started again in New Hampshire. So we had the doctor induce Adrian to have Patrick on, I think it was a Wednesday, and my school started that Monday. So she had Patrick. We stayed the night in the hospital with Adrian. We came home, had a day there, blessed him with the family, and I hopped in the car on, I guess, Friday morning, and took off myself and drove Friday, Saturday, Sunday, got to New Hampshire late Sunday night and started class Monday morning. And then Adrian flew out with Patrick, and a couple weeks later, and we got situated into a new place out there because we moved apartments between our first year and second year because the first year place was kind of a dive. We moved out to the countryside. For the second year, had Patrick out there. So Locke was born between actually we were in labor between in pregnancy, second and third year, while I was in Palo Alto, as I mentioned. And so he was due in the 1st of November. And we'd flown out to Utah to interview with Mattson and Metcalf the 1st of October. And that went well. We'd flown back. And we're at Walmart one night with Adrian and Patrick. And Adrian says, "I think my water broke." And I look behind, and she's covered in blood. And so I'm like, we gotta get to the hospital. So we zip off to the hospital as fast as we can, which was close, but I was going real fast on some small roads, and get her in there. And she'd probably been hemorrhaging for a while, but she had placenta previa, which was making it so you couldn't quite tell. And so they deliver Locke early, and because he was a big boy, almost 6 pounds, and he was only 3 weeks away from being due. So they do emergency C-section to save Adrian, deliver Locke. Well, they get Locke out, and his chest just starts puffing, and his lungs aren't working right. And as the night goes on, he's getting worse and worse, and they're turning up the oxygen level, and the tank he's in is just not working. So by 6 o'clock, they said, "We're calling a life flight." And there was a pediatric intensive care nursery at Dartmouth Hitchcock in Hanover, New Hampshire, about an hour away. So they came down to the hospital in a helicopter and put Locke in this little canister, basically, and full of tubes, and rushed him up on a helicopter. Apparently, he went to cardiac arrest on the flight up there. And so Adrian and I talked, and she said, "You need to go up with Locke." And so I left her there after a C-section, and my friend drove me up to the hospital. It was just, I'd slept all night and full of tears, and so I recall getting to the hospital finally, and I got to the hallway where the intensive care nursery was, and I had been out of communication for a couple hours, and didn't have a cell phone coverage at the time there. And I remember thinking, what am I going to find at the end of this hallway? I'm going to see the receptionist there. I can see the receptionist. He's going to say, "Oh, 1 minute, please, to someone tell me my son died, I was going to say, oh, this way. I remember thinking my life's going to change into this hallway. So I walk up and there was a big bearded man in overalls named David. And he said, I said, I'm here to see, my son was flown here, Locke Hansen. He goes, oh, Lockie's dad. And so he took me back and Locke had stabilized a bit. I was happy to see him there. But he took 17 days in intensive care nursery. And, he was on oxygen for most of the time, on life support and, in and out of a lot of struggles there for sure. We stayed at a place called David's House, like a Ronald McDonald's house for families who had sick kids there. So I checked out of school essentially for a month because I had a week for interviewing in Salt Lake and then 3 weeks with my son in the hospital. I just essentially dropped out of school and just sat there with my son. And after about 3 weeks, they pulled the plugs off and said, take him home. It was terrifying because it was like, okay, yesterday, if you unplugged him, he would die. Now you're just unplugging, giving to me. So I remember just every hour I'd sneak over, look at him, like, is he breathing? And listen to his chest, and and try to feel if he's breathing or not. And boy, that was a terribly anxious time. But that was behind me, and then until we had our next child, where I was laid off. 2 months before she was born, I got a job, and my insurance kicked in 2 weeks before my wife went into labor a month early, again. So I'm at work. I've been out of the office for a couple hours doing some recruiting for my old law school, and I get back and there's a message, your wife called. She's like, I'm in labor. So I haul off to the hospital, another emergency C-section, beautiful daughter, she's not breathing either. It's like, and again, they drain all this blood out of Olivia, and just like Locke, they put him in a can, they turn the oxygen up and keep turning it up. It's like nothing's happening. It's like, this is all over again. And suddenly, just where Locke fell off a cliff, she stabilized. And the oxygen held, and she suddenly started improving. And so she had she was just on oxygen for a while. A couple days recover, and she swallowed a lot of blood, but she made it out okay. So a little drama there. And then with my fourth daughter, my second daughter, Charlotte, I had my big trial that I won was the week she was due. So we had her induced, Adrian induced the week before so I could be there. And she was born November 1st, the day after Halloween. And my law firm had said, go be with your baby. It's important. We can take care of this case. So we got in the morning, had her delivered. It went really well. And by 2 o'clock, I was getting calls because people didn't know what's going on in the case because it was my case for the past 2 years. You just can't pick those things up easily. By 6 o'clock, things were in shambles, and I was on the phone. And then I had to go the next day. So they're like, I got to go in the next day. My wife had a C-section, and she had to stay at the hospital for 4 days. So I take off the hospital and gone from 9 till like 1 in the morning while she's there. And I got back, and my daughter had jaundice at that time and is now on a heating lamp. So I got to hold her for a little bit, sleep next to my wife, say hello, go back to work again, come back. Then next day, picked her up, took her to home, dropped her off with the kids. She had 4 kids now in a C-section. I had to drive back to work, and she packed the kids up, took them to my parents' house, who helped her with the kids for the week I was gone. But after the trial, I took a month off. It's like, I'm done. Take a month off with the kids. But that definitely was hard to do with the drama there. Finally, our 5th child, our last son, Ronan, I was a hypertherm at the time. Life was much easier, and the biggest challenge was making sure that this is her 4th C-section this time, and to make sure that there wasn't some premature issue again. So they went to Ronan carefully. It went really, really well. And the biggest drama that happened is when went in to be induced, Adrian had a close friend of hers who was pregnant the exact same time and due the exact same day. And we were going in a week early. And she was mad because we were going in a week early. Well, as we're in the hospital, a nurse runs in to say, by the way, your friend Julianne's in the room next door having a baby too. So our close friends were in the room next door and had a baby. I think Maya had a baby before us. It was really close, within a couple hours, and then we were in the hospital together, but she got to leave earlier because she didn't have a C-section. So our two sons, who Ronan and Adam were good buddies, had the exact same birthday. So there's always some interest around our children's birth. Around 2011, we'd been married in 1997, so it's about 14 years into our marriage, and by my assessment, marriage was going good. There's always little struggles here and there. There was no fighting. We traveled the world. We went on dates. We spent a lot of time together, had a lot of family activities. We worked in the yard together, worked in the kitchen together. But my wife was, I think, just not, there's a lot of reasons behind this. This is not the forum to go into it, but I think the life she wanted and the life she thought she should have were not the same thing. And so she pursued the life that she thought was the right life for her and the right pace, I guess, and being home with the kids and whatnot. And at one point, that just kind of snapped, and that's not quite what she wanted anymore. And that led to the marriage falling apart. And so that was a big trial, as I learned really how unhappy she was. And I was, obliviously happy with the marriage and life, as a lot of people are at times. And, tried to, kind of see things slipping over a couple of years and trying to slow things down and stop it. And, tried counseling and tried working through things. And it just, I couldn't quite recover it. And not knowing some of the real challenges that were there, and really, people are always uneducated about relationships until they fall apart, I think, and that was definitely us to a certain extent, where certain things I was doing, I thought I was being kind, and she saw the exact opposite. And so living two very different experiences at the same time, not realizing that one person's happy, one person's really having a hard time. And so Adrian had asked to move out, and this is around, I think, 2012 in springtime. And I said, well, what if we, instead of having a formal separation, she wanted to go back to school, what if we sent her to spring semester BYU? I'll stay home and watch the kids in New Hampshire. She can have some months to kind of recenter herself again. And so we agreed on kind of a quiet separation that nobody knew it was a separation. It was just her chance to go and pursue some schooling. And so she did that, and it helped her quite a bit. But coming back, I was in China when she came back, and her mother had flown to watch the kids. And so I came back, I hadn't seen her for 3 months, and the first thing she said to me was, I want a separation. So that was heartbreaking. Those were years where you've got to go with life, and you're trying to fix a relationship, and it takes time to do that, but you can't just stop living life. You've got to work. I was in the bishopric at the time. I had the job, I had the kids, and so I'm there trying to put a smiling face on things while going through this. And it was really hard. A lot of hard months, a lot of prayer, a lot of crying, but it just didn't work. And so I said, well, if you want to leave, I'm moving back to Utah. I guess this is 2013, not 2012. I said, I'm going to move back to Utah because the prospect of being single in New Hampshire for an LDS guy was not too promising. And I could use family support. So I told my firm I was going to leave from my company, and they said, you can take the job remotely. And so we packed up, and we decided to look for houses together and kind of give it perhaps one last shot looking together. And we found a house that I guess I liked more than she did. And we moved to Utah, and with the hopes of putting things together, and we got here in September, and she within a couple weeks said, okay, I'm looking for a place of my own now. So, and she moved out in November 2013. We attempted a reconciliation kind of the summer of 2014. She moved back in around August, I think. I had filed for divorce papers at one point and then withdrew them to try to work on things. And she moved back in in late August, early September. And we realized at that point, the challenges were still there. And, it kind of felt more like because she had left me with the kids and took no alimony with her. So I guess I took it as her coming back for a better bargaining position, which she definitely got. And so as you realized it wasn't going to work out, she moved out in, I think, February of 2015 again, and we settled on some kid sharing time where in the past I had the kids full time except for every other weekend. We would share their kids every other week, week on, week off, and filed for the papers, and we worked together pretty well. And then in July 10th, 2015, it was 10 days shy of our 20th anniversary. We ended up getting divorced. It was a hard time. You look back now, and with a future to build and some good promising things in the horizon, it's perhaps not as hard, but those were hard years, especially where there really wasn't any fighting. There wasn't much that I thought would hurt the marriage, but it wasn't. I built the marriage I had wanted, and it wasn't perhaps the marriage and family she had wanted. And so, that was an incredibly difficult time. Lots of days of crying, a lot of writing, a lot of thinking, and I'd always told myself that, I'd never get divorced. I knew how to make a marriage work. Always just be a little kinder, always a little nicer, forgive, try to be a good person, and that anybody can make a marriage work if they try. And I think any two people can, but any one person can't. And to kind of go from seeing people who were divorced as these people who were quitters and couldn't make it work to being one of them was a very big change, a difficult one to get used to. So after my divorce, I jumped right back into dating. We'd really been separated on and off for about 2 years at this point, and even while living together, pretty much estranged for almost 3 years at this point. So I'm a builder. I like to build. So I got back in the dating scene, and that was such a good and difficult experience. For the first thing, the number of women outnumber the number of men, or quality men and quality women, is in the man's favor by a long shot. And there's a lot of good women out there. And I jumped into dances and cruises. I went to a cruise and hikes, and it was fun, but it wasn't real life. That was the thing I realized the most about it, was the life of being a father and being a kid and having kids and being responsible is very different from the singles world, which was parties all the time, like being a high school kid, but grown up now and a little more freedom in life. And so that was this strange world I was in. And I made myself a rule. I said I was going to go on dates or meet 30 different women for a date with one woman more than 3 times. And I almost kept that. I was close, but I'd met a woman the second day I was divorced. Actually, we dated for on and off for a year, and a good friend and someone I cared a lot about. But in the end, it wasn't the right one. And that was always that tricky thing, to find the right one and trying to find how that works in dating. And my, as I thought about it, for me, it was a combination of the head and the heart. You've got to be attracted to that person. There's got to be a bit of a spark. You're like, this person, I'm attracted to her. I'm excited to be with her, and she's fun, and you want to be there. That's the heart part, and that was actually surprisingly less common to find than the head part, frankly, for me. Then the head was, is she a good match for you? Is she the right one for the life you want to live? Is she the right one for your gospel and your faith? The right one to be, to help you around the house and to be with your family, and those things about living the life you want and continuing your life, and then the person you just want to throw your life with and run off into the horizon. And I found one or the other in a lot of girls, and I found both to a certain extent in a few women, but it wasn't quite reciprocated in some of those cases. But that's what I was looking for on the dating scene, and I had some fun times. And in this time, I started writing a blog quite a bit, and got a good readership going up. And it was kind of fun to write and have people read and comment on you. And I met girls that way and got lots of dates that way. It was fun to go to dances and people recognize me and who I'd never met before, who read my blog and say nice things. And that was you're always looking for that reassurance after divorce because your self-esteem's been stomped, because it's also this dichotomy of people are telling you how great you are, but the person you love the most in the world just said, no, you're not, I'm leaving you. And so that was one of those hard things to deal with, and your self-esteem is up and down all over the place. And on the one hand, you're frustrated because you can't, all the girls you really want to date don't quite like you, but you're doing the same thing to other people where they're interested in you and you're not interested in them. And so it's this perpetual motion of heartbreak and twitterpation, and it's a nonstop fighting process of how many more girls can I find until you finally click and find the right one. So after a year and a half of this dating turmoil, it was actually December of 2016, I had been on and off dating a couple different women, and some other women in my life had come back into my life at this point, and I kept trying to make those work, and it wasn't, and I was frustrated with myself because I felt like I was hurting these women who I cared about, and kind of giving hope, and then pulling away, and I was just feeling like a jerk. And so, I want to go for New Year's. I didn't have my kids. I'm going to go away for New Year's where I don't know anybody. And I was trying to go out of town. I'm like, I don't have the money right now. So there was a single snowmobiling activity up in Bear Lake, and I didn't know anybody there. There was a girl who read my blog who invited me to the activity. And so on the way up, I just kind of had some music, and I thought to myself, you know what, let's just take 4 or 5 months off of dating. Take the spring off, or winter and spring, and just work on yourself, the kids, write a book. Don't worry about dating. Just take a break, because it's just, you're not in the right spot apparently, because you're meeting these great women, but nothing's connecting with you. So something must be wrong with you, or with me, as I'm talking to myself out loud, up to Bear Lake. And so I get there, and as I walk in the door, and as I'm talking to the people that are hosting, this beautiful woman walks in. I'm like, wow, that girl's pretty. Kiss this girl, hopefully. And then in walks after her boyfriend she's with. I'm like, someone said, yeah, they're almost engaged. I'm like, all right, it's just my luck. And in these single scenes, I definitely was much more comfortable in dad mode. And this was an activity where you could bring your kids. And so a bunch of folks have brought some kids, and there's cute little kids there, and they were making some paninis. I'm like, I'll help the kids out. So making the paninis with the kids, and not comfortable flirting with as many people as most singles activities entail. I went out sledding and with the kids, these kids I'd met as well, and we played charades together, and kind of find out their mom was this pretty girl named Julie who was with another guy at the time. And so it was a fun weekend. We had New Year's Eve celebration and fireworks, and I played games with the kids. And then I think the morning we were leaving, I got up early, and no one was awake but Julie and her kids, and the kids played chess, and I helped Julie play against them, and I got a chance to talk to her, and we had some fun times talking in the kitchen. But she had this guy she's almost engaged to. It's like, God, just my luck. So I left Bear Lake, and I met some friends there and some nice people. Like, okay, maybe something will come out of this. And so I got back, and I sent a friend request to Julie on Facebook, and nothing, no comment back. I'm like, worth a try, and just to see if she was there. And so a week later, I'm heading to ice skating, and I get a message on my phone from Julie Smith, and I oh, it was like friend request accepted, and a message. And the message said, I'm never on Facebook. I'm not a Facebook snob, but I got your friend request, and hope you're doing something fun. I'm like, well, I'm actually heading off ice skating right now with my family, and I said, this may be a little straightforward, but I thought you're a pretty cool person, and I liked your kids a lot, and but I understand your relationship with someone else, and I don't want to, ruin a good thing with you, because the worst thing you do is you pull somebody from a relationship that's going somewhere to test out a date and have it go nowhere, and then destroy a couple relationships right there. And so I'm like, I don't want to ruin if you had a good thing, but if you're not exclusive, or if something changes, let me know. And I got a message back right away. She said, well, actually, we decided to take a break from dating before Bear Lake, but decided to go to Bear Lake together. So, it'd be fun to get together. So I was excited at this point, because I was just really interested in Julie, but it was like just my luck that the stars didn't align, but suddenly they lined up. So we managed to arrange a date in about 10 days, and we went. She had her kids that night, and it was tough to find a time anyway. So we said, "How about I pick you up? We'll go to dinner, and then we can go on a night hike to the grotto up Spanish Fork Canyon." And I'd been there. The grotto's about 300 yards off the road, and it was wintertime, and so we take our snow boots and just kind of walk up through the snow, not very far. So went to dinner, had a great time, and started driving towards the grotto, and I hit a giant, and I came upon a giant snow wall in the middle of the road. Like, I can't drive past here. The road wasn't plowed. We're about 2 miles away. I'm like, this must be the wrong way, because she'd been to the grotto the week before. She goes, "Oh, you walked from here." And it was 10 o'clock at night. And so I'm like, oh, the night hike's a 10-mile night hike. And I actually knew we were night hiking, but I didn't realize it was 10 miles. It was 2 miles, sorry, not 10 miles, 2 miles. I thought it was like 300-yard night hike. So I had my gun in my pack in case we came across any wild animals, but we managed to hike up to the grotto. She definitely out-hiked me. The grotto is this carved out stone area and waterfall coming down, but it had frozen. So I had some spotlights, and so we shined spotlights on the icicles, and I had some food, some music, and it turned into this really romantic, fun evening. And I think we were both kind of smitten at that point. When, started going, more dates, and just really turned it to be the head and the heart finally lined up there. And it was nice to see somebody who my kids adore, and I adore her kids. And it's been one of these relationships where you're like, things finally fall into place. And it's that, like, you've lost something, but finally you found it. And that's where I found that. And so we're dating very long. I'm like, you know what? We should get married. This is, I've looked around. I've dated lots and lots of people, women, and there's no one that is as good a fit for me as you are. And it just seems like I'm wasting my time now. And we should get married. And so we started talking marriage pretty early. And so on April 6th is the date, we went to Thanksgiving Point, and we got reached out the week before, and I asked her to marry me. She said yes. So we're presently in the process of getting things lined up to be married. There's a temple clearance and cancellation process you have to go through, which takes some time. So we're working through that, but I hope to be married in a month or so and start the new phase of life. Looking at my own life and talking about it right here, kind of maybe my final thoughts on life here. And I heard this a lot in a conference talk as well, that no one misses those days spent at work. No one says, I wish I spent extra days at work. It's taking those moments to be with your family that everyone wishes they had more of. And I think I realized that early at Work Meneidiger when I was working nonstop, that this isn't worth it. Yeah, I was a really young partner on the fast track, and I was making lots of money, and I was going to be very wealthy and successful, and things were looking great. And I'm doing just fine now, but it wasn't worth the life that I was losing for it. And the things that I'm happiest with is those moments with my family, making those little moments enjoyable, making an ordinary day special. And that's, to me, my trick in life. And that's what I love about Julie, is she's the same way. But finding chances to take an ordinary dull day and do something special with it. And it's not the extra days of the office. It's not beating yourself up for more money or more cars or possessions, which, there's always fun to have, but it's those things that support having a fun family life and an enjoyable day, and to living your life in a way where you're not afraid to see people. You're not embarrassed of what you've done. You're not beholden to anybody, and you're not afraid of the bank collector or the bill collector. But you can have a life that's a little more free to enjoy yourself. And I haven't done that perfectly, but that's been a goal in life. And I always keep sometimes a hopeless optimism out there. Life's going to throw stuff at you. Never saw a divorce coming in life. And yeah, it hurt, but you pick yourself up and you move on with life. And that's how I hope I live my life. And I think I once wrote in one of my blog posts, and perhaps it's true, that I hope to live a life in a way that's full and deep and meaningful, and I always keep moving. And I think I wrote that I hope when I die they tell the mourners at the funeral that they were unable to recover the body, so because I was doing something adventurous or fun or maybe even accident prone, that they weren't able to get me back to bury me. But I want my life to be like that, to be a meaningful, full, and good life, but a life that is full of adventure, fun, and that, yeah, bad things happen. And you just pick yourself up and move to the next step, because you can't stay stuck forever. Thanks.